The auctioneer's voice cut through the packed room like a chainsaw through oak. $18 million. The words hung in the air of the Heritage Auction House, impossible and real at the same time. Tom Brennan stood backstage, his weathered carpenter's hands gripping his grandfather's pocket watch so hard the engraved case bit into his palm. Through the gap in the curtain, he could see the crowd. 200 faces turned toward the stage, where the massive red combine sat under spotlights like a shrine. The machine gleamed. Every inch of International Harvester red paint caught the light. Chrome accents blazed. The serial plate shone like new money, those numbers etched into history. IH 1480-001. The first one, the only one. Tom's throat tightened. 6 months ago, he'd thought his grandfather had lost his mind. 6 months ago, he'd stood in a lawyer's office while his cousins divided up a lifetime of Earl Brennan's work. And he'd walked away with what everyone called a rust bucket. A joke. A slap in the face wrapped in a last will and testament. The auctioneer's gavel cracked down. Sold. $18 million to the Morrison Agricultural Foundation. The room erupted. Tom closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him. Somewhere in that noise, he could hear his grandfather laughing. That dry chuckle Earl used to make when he knew something nobody else did. When he could see value where other men saw junk. Tom opened his eyes. The combine was rolling away now, guided by white-gloved handlers like pallbearers at a funeral. In a way, that's what this was. The final service for Earl Brennan, Korean War veteran, farmer, engineer, teacher. The man who raised Tom when Tom's own father came home from Vietnam in a flag-draped box. 6 months ago, that's when it started. That's when Tom learned that sometimes the most valuable inheritances look worthless to everyone else. The rain came down in sheets the day they buried Earl. November in Iowa, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. St. Mary's Catholic Church sat on a hill outside Cedar Falls, white clapboard in a copper steeple gone green with age. Tom pulled his truck into the gravel lot and killed the engine. Through the windshield, he could see the crowd gathering under black umbrellas. A sea of them, farmers mostly, men Earl's age with faces like leather and hands that knew work. Tom sat there for a minute, 52 years old, and he still felt like that kid, 14 years old, standing in this same parking lot for his father's funeral. Different war, same church, same rain. Earl had stood beside him that day, one hand on Tom's shoulder, solid as oak. Didn't say much, didn't need to. The hand said everything. Tom looked down at his own hands, carpenter's hands, scarred and calloused, nails permanently stained with wood finish no amount of scrubbing could remove. These were Earl's hands, passed down through blood and teaching. Every scar had a lesson. Every callus told a story. He got out of the truck. The rain hit him immediately, cold and clean. He'd worn his only suit, 15 years old and tight across the shoulders. No tie. Earl never wore ties except to weddings and funerals, and even then he loosened them before the ceremony ended. Tom figured Earl would appreciate the gesture. The church was full. Tom slipped into a back pew trying to be invisible. Up front, he could see his cousins. Bobby Brennan sat in the first row, 55 years old and prosperous. Custom suit, probably cost more than Tom made in a month. Bobby owned the biggest car dealership in Waterloo, 300 employees, billboards on every highway. Next to him sat his wife Nancy, dripping diamonds even at a funeral. Catherine, everyone called her Kathy, sat across the aisle. 53, real estate agent, the kind who could sell a house before the sign went up in the yard. She wore black Chanel and pearls. Her husband Richard was a surgeon. They lived in the kind of house that had a name instead of just an address. Bill Brennan, the youngest at 50, sat with his family. Insurance agency owner, did well enough. 3 kids in private school, vacation house in Florida. Bill had that look of a man who'd spent his life playing it safe and never quite figured out why. That left him feeling empty. Then there was Tom. Divorced 3 years, 2 daughters who barely called, living in a rental house with a workshop in the garage, and tools worth more than his truck. Brennan Custom Carpentry, the sign said. Custom because nobody could afford his work, and carpentry because carpenter sounded better than unemployed woodworker with a dream. The priest began. Father Mackenzie, older than Earl by a decade, voice thin as Bible paper. He talked about Earl's service in Korea, about the farm, about 50 years of marriage to Martha before cancer took her. He talked about Earl's son, James, Tom's father, killed at 23 in the jungles of Vietnam. He talked about community and faith and the dignity of work. Tom barely heard it. His mind kept drifting to the last time he'd seen Earl. 2 months ago, late September, Tom had driven out to the farmhouse with a load of firewood. Earl had been sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket even though the day was warm. He'd looked small. That's what got Tom. Earl Brennan had never been small. They'd sat together, not saying much. That was their way. Finally, Earl spoke. Whatever happens, trust the plan. Tom had figured it was the morphine talking. The cancer had spread to Earl's bones by then. The doctor said it was a matter of weeks. What plan, Grandpa? Earl had smiled, that knowing smile. You'll see, Tommy. You'll see when it matters. 3 weeks later, Earl died in his sleep. 91 years old. Purple heart on the nightstand. Dirt under his fingernails from the garden he'd kept until he couldn't stand anymore. The funeral ended. The crowd filed out into the rain. Tom stood back, letting his cousins play their roles. Bobby shaking hands like he was running for mayor. Kathy organizing the reception with her phone, even here, even now. Bill making sure everyone knew about the scholarship fund he'd set up in Earl's name, $2,000 that would get someone halfway through a semester. Tom walked to the gravesite alone. They'd be lowering Earl next to Martha, next to James. 3 generations of Brennans in a row. Tom would join them someday. Maybe his daughters would come. Maybe not. He stayed until everyone left. Stayed until the gravediggers started their work. Then he drove home through the rain and tried not to think about the fact that the last man who really knew him was gone. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and lemon furniture polish. Howard Mitchell had been Earl's attorney for 40 years. His office hadn't changed in all that time. Dark wood paneling, diplomas from 1962, a photo of JFK on the wall next to a crucifix. Mitchell himself was 70-something, thin as a rail with wire-rimmed glasses and a bow tie. Tom arrived early. He sat in the waiting room watching rain streak the windows. His cousins showed up together, Bobby's Mercedes, Kathy's Lexus, Bill's sensible Honda. They came in talking, voices too loud for the space. Bobby saw Tom and nodded. Kathy gave him a pity smile. Bill shook his hand, grip firm and false. How you holding up, Tommy? Getting by. We should have lunch sometime. Catch up. Sure, Bill. Sounds good. Neither of them meant it. Mitchell called them in. His conference room had a table that could seat 12, but today held only 5. Mitchell at the head, the 4 cousins arranged like cardinal points on a compass. Bobby and Kathy to his right, successful and sure. Bill and Tom to his left, one playing at success, one not playing at all. Mitchell opened a leather folder. Inside, Tom could see Earl's handwriting on yellow legal paper. His grandfather had written his own will, dated 6 months ago, witnessed and notarized, but written in Earl's own hand. Let's begin. Mitchell read through the formalities. Sound mind, legal age, proper execution. Then he got to the meat of it. To my grandson, Robert Brennan, I leave the farmhouse and surrounding 5 acres. Bobby nodded. Expected. The farmhouse was a 3-story Victorian built in 1892, lovingly maintained, worth at least $800,000, maybe more. The kind of house that showed up in architecture magazines. To my granddaughter, Catherine Brennan Hayes, I leave the southern 100 acres of farmland. Kathy's face stayed neutral, but Tom saw the calculation in her eyes. Prime farmland, currently leased to the Miller family for corn, worth $70,000 a year in lease fees alone, or $1.4 million if she sold it to developers, which she would. To my grandson, William Brennan, I leave the John Deere 8R tractor and all associated farm equipment currently stored in the machinery barn. Bill grinned. Modern equipment barely used since Earl had leased out the farming operation 5 years back. $250,000 in machinery, easy. Bill was probably already planning the auction. Mitchell paused. He looked at Tom over his glasses. To my grandson, Thomas Brennan, I leave the 1975 International Harvester 1480 Combine, currently located in the back 40 acres. Silence. Then Bobby laughed. Actually laughed out loud. The rust bucket? Jesus, Earl. Kathy's face went soft with pity. Tom, I'm so sorry. That's just cruel. Bill shook his head. Maybe he was confused at the end. The medications, you know. Tom sat there feeling every eye in the room on him. The back 40. He knew the machine Bobby meant. It had been sitting in that field since 1991, the year Earl stopped farming actively. 33 years of rain and snow and sun. The paint had faded to pink in places. Rust had eaten through the sheet metal. Weeds grew up through the chassis. Tom had climbed on it as a kid, pretending to drive, while Earl worked nearby. He'd thought of it as a playground toy. Apparently, Earl thought of it as an inheritance. Bobby leaned back in his chair. Mitchell, this is insane. That thing hasn't run since the 80s. It's not worth the metal. The will is quite clear. Then the will is wrong. Earl wasn't thinking straight. We all know that. Kathy jumped in, her voice gentle but firm. Tom, we want to help you. This isn't fair. Let us talk to a lawyer about contesting this. We can get you a fair share. Bill nodded. I know a guy. Estate law. He can file papers by Monday. Tom found his voice. What if I don't want to contest it? Three faces turned to him like he'd spoken in tongues. Bobby's smile died. Tom, don't be stupid about this. That machine is junk. You'd be lucky to get 500 for scrap metal. Maybe Grandpa had his reasons. What reasons? Kathy asked. Tom, you can't possibly want that thing. Mitchell cleared his throat. There's something else. He pulled an envelope from the folder. Cream-colored paper, heavy stock. Tom's name written across it in Earl's shaky handwriting. The letters wandered across the page like a drunk man walking home, but they were clear enough. Earl instructed me to give you this. He said to read it alone when you were ready. Tom reached for the envelope. His hand looked rough and dark against the expensive paper. The envelope was sealed with red wax, pressed with Earl's signet ring. The one he'd worn every day since Korea, the one with the Brennan family crest that went back to County Cork in 1847. Bobby watched the envelope like it might explode. What's in it? I don't know. Earl sealed it himself. Probably an apology, Kathy said, for giving Tom the shaft. Mitchell stood, signaling the meeting's end. The will is filed with the court. Barring any legal challenges, probate should close in 90 days. Until then, each of you has access to your inheritance, but can't sell or significantly alter it. Bobby was already on his phone. Kathy gathered her purse. Bill lingered. Tom, seriously, call me. We'll figure this out. Thanks, Bill. Tom walked out of the building into afternoon light. The rain had stopped, but everything was wet, reflecting gray sky like mirrors. His cousins stood by their cars, a small huddle, talking. They glanced at Tom, then away, planning something probably, trying to figure out how to fix Earl's mistake. Tom got in his truck and set the envelope on the passenger seat. He didn't open it, not yet. Instead, he drove. He drove past Bobby's dealership, 5 acres of shining cars and snapping flags. Past Kathy's real estate office, her face on a billboard smiling down at traffic. Past Bill's insurance agency, in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Subway. Then he drove out of town, following roads he knew by heart. The farmhouse sat on a rise, surrounded by oak trees older than the state. 200 acres spread out around it, some wooded, some cleared, some gone back to wild. Earl had bought this land in 1957 with his GI Bill money and Martha's dowry. Paid it off in 20 years. Lived here for 67 years. Raised his son here. Watched his son leave for war. Got the telegram here. Tom parked on the road. Bobby's Mercedes was already in the driveway. Of course. Already taking possession. Already planning renovations probably. Turn it into a bed and breakfast or some such thing. Tom walked across the fields. The ground was soft from rain, his boots sinking into black Iowa soil. This land had fed people for a century and a half. Corn, soybeans, wheat, oats. Now it would feed Bobby's bank account. The back 40 stretched out before him. Unplanted for years, gone to prairie grass and wildflowers. And there, sitting in the middle like a shipwreck, was the combine. It was bigger than Tom remembered. 28 feet long, 16 wide, 13 tall. A monster machine, painted International Harvester red back when red meant something. The paint had faded and peeled. Rust bloomed across the sheet metal in abstract patterns. The rubber tires had rotted, leaving the machine settled onto its rims. The cab glass was intact but clouded. The header, the business end that cut and gathered grain, sat detached nearby, slowly sinking into the earth. Tom walked around it. Up close, he could see the engineering. This wasn't some simple machine. The rotary separator system, the grain tank, the cleaning shoe, all of it complex and purposeful. Earl used to talk about this combine like it was a person. She's special, Tommy. Changed everything. Tom had never understood. It was just an old machine, just another piece of farm equipment left to die when the work stopped. But Earl had left it to him, specifically, by name. While his other cousins got houses and land and modern equipment, Tom got this. There had to be a reason. He climbed up onto the machine, using the rusty ladder bolted to the side. The cab door screeched open. Inside, everything was coated in dust and mouse droppings. The seat was torn, foam spilling out like guts. The steering wheel was pitted with rust. The dashboard gauges were frozen, needles pointing at nothing. Tom sat in the driver's seat. It sagged under his weight, springs gone. He put his hands on the wheel and looked out through the clouded glass at the field stretching away. How many acres had Earl harvested from this seat? How many seasons? How many sunrises and sunsets and long days of work? The envelope in his jacket pocket felt heavy. Tom pulled it out. The wax seal caught the light. He ran his thumb over it, feeling the impression of the ring. Earl's ring, the one they'd buried him wearing. Tom broke the seal. Inside, 2 pages of yellow legal paper, covered in Earl's handwriting. The letters were shaky but determined. Tom recognized the ballpoint pen, the same one Earl had used for 50 years. A cross pen, heavy in gold, engraved with Earl's name. Tom had given it to him for his 70th birthday. He read, "Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm gone and they laughed at you." Tom's throat closed, his eyes burned. I know they did. Bobby with his smirk, Kathy with her pity, Bill with his calculations. They don't understand. They never did. But you, Tommy, you got the Brennan gift. Not the gift for making money. The gift for seeing value where others see junk. You remember when you found that Civil War bayonet in the barn? You were 16. Everyone else walked past it for years. Rusty piece of metal in the dirt. But you saw something, cleaned it up, researched it, took it to the museum. They gave you $200. I remember the look on your face, like you'd found gold. And in a way you had, not the money, the knowing, the seeing. That combine ain't junk, son. She's hiding something. Remember when I taught you about hidden compartments in old furniture? How craftsmen would build secret spaces, disguised by the grain of the wood, invisible unless you knew where to look. That combine's got a secret too. Grain tank, left side, 3rd panel from the front. Count 7 rivets down, 4 rivets right. That panel ain't welded like the others. It's held by clips, hidden clips. You'll need to pry gentle, but she'll come free. Inside, you'll find the truth about what I left you. Don't tell the others. Not yet. Not until you understand. Trust me, Tommy. Your old grandpa's last harvest ain't done yet. The letter was signed with Earl's full name, written large and clear despite the shaking hand. Below it, a postscript. The combination lock you'll find inside. Use your mama's birthday. You remember. Tom read the letter 3 times. His hands shook. His chest felt tight. Around him, the combine creaked in the wind. Metal settling, rust flaking, the sound of decay. Or maybe not decay, maybe just patience. Tom looked toward the farmhouse. Lights on now. Bobby probably inside, already claiming territory. The sun was dropping, painting everything gold and orange. In an hour, it would be dark. Tom climbed down from the cab. He walked back to his truck, got his toolbox from the bed. A good toolbox, organized and maintained. Every tool had its place. Every place had its tool. Earl had taught him that. He walked back to the combine as the sun touched the horizon, climbed back up, looked at the grain tank. It was a large metal container, maybe 12 feet tall and 8 across, painted red like everything else. The tank held the harvested grain until it could be unloaded into a truck. Left side, 3rd panel from the front. Tom counted. The panels were riveted together, rows and rows of round-headed rivets marching across the metal. Industrial. Permanent. 7 rivets down, 4 right. Tom found the spot. He pulled a flashlight from his jacket, shone it on the metal. At first, everything looked the same. But then he saw it. The rust pattern. Around all the other rivets, rust bloomed in perfect circles, staining the red paint brown. But around this rivet, nothing. The paint was clean. Someone had been maintaining this access point. Tom pulled a screwdriver from his belt, wedged it under the edge of the panel, applied pressure, gentle at first, then harder. For a minute, nothing happened. Then something clicked. The panel shifted. Tom worked the screwdriver around the edge, finding more clips, each one released with a soft snap. 20 minutes later, the panel came free. Behind it, darkness. Tom shined his flashlight inside. There, bolted to the interior framework of the grain tank, was a metal box. Military green, about the size of a shoebox. Ammunition container, by the look of it. The kind that held 50 caliber rounds. Tom's heart hammered. He reached in, unbolted the box, pulled it out. Heavy. 20 pounds, maybe more. The box was wrapped in heavy plastic, sealed with professional tape. No moisture had touched this. No rust. Earl had protected this. Recently. Maybe as recently as before the hospice, before the end. Tom looked around. The sun was down now. Everything twilight. The farmhouse lights glowed. Bobby's Mercedes hadn't moved. Tom felt like a thief, even though this was his inheritance, his legacy, whatever that meant. He climbed down, careful with the box, walked across the field to his truck, set the box on the passenger seat like it was made of glass, drove away without turning on his headlights until he reached the main road. At home, Tom set the box on his kitchen table. 1:30 in the morning. He should sleep, should wait until his head was clear. But he knew he wouldn't sleep. Couldn't. He made coffee, strong and black, sat down at the table, looked at the box. It was marked in faded stencil. U.S. Army, 50 cal, and a date, 1968. The year before his father shipped to Vietnam. The year before James Brennan became another name on a wall in Washington, D.C. Tom cut away the plastic, used a kitchen knife, careful not to scratch the metal underneath. The box was pristine. When he opened it, the hinges moved smooth and quiet, well-oiled, maintained. Inside, organized like a soldier's footlocker. Documents in plastic sleeves, photographs, letters, and on top, another envelope. This one sealed with tape, not wax. Tom's name in Earl's handwriting. Letter number 2. Tom opened it. His hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, calm. The calm that comes when you're about to learn something that changes everything. Tommy, you found it. Good boy. Now sit down, pour a stiff drink, because what I'm about to tell you will knock you sideways. That combine ain't just a combine. She's serial number 001, the very first 1975 International Harvester 1480 ever built. In 1974, IH hired me as test engineer. Not because I had degrees, though I got one from Iowa State in '57. They hired me because I'd farmed for 20 years and understood machines. More than that, I could feel them, know when something was wrong by the sound, by the smell, by the way the metal moved under my hands. They gave me prototype 001 in April 1975. Delivered it on a flatbed. Engineers came with it, men in ties and clipboards. They explained the revolutionary rotary separator system, showed me the technical drawings, told me I was part of history. I tested her for 2 seasons, 847 hours, 1,200 acres. 3 different crops, documented everything in logbooks, every weird sound, every jam, every adjustment. That machine changed farming forever, Tommy. First successful rotary separator system. Before that, combines used cylinder bars that beat the grain out. Rough. Lost a lot of good grain that way. But the rotary system, it rubbed the grain free, gentle-like. More grain saved, less damage, more money for farmers. Every combine you see today traces back to this machine, to serial number 001. When testing ended in '76, IH wanted her for their corporate museum. Makes sense, right? Historic machine. But I'd fallen in love with that combine. She'd saved my farm during bad years. Drought in '75, grain prices down. I couldn't afford a new machine, but IH gave me prototype 001 free for testing. She brought in 3 harvests that kept me afloat. So I made them a deal. I'd buy her at full retail price, $51,000. Cost me near everything I had, and they could build another for the museum. They thought I was crazy, paying full price for used equipment. But I knew. Over the years, collectors found out. Offers came. 1992, a man from Texas, $250,000. 2001, a museum in California, $1.2 million. 2015, after IH went bankrupt and the history got famous, $4.5 million. Last year, 2023, $9 million. Private collector wanted it for his personal collection. I refused them all. Why, your cousins will ask? Why turn down $9 million to let a machine rot in a field? Because I was waiting for the right time. Waiting for you, Tommy. Your cousins are good people in their way. Bobby builds businesses. Kathy moves real estate. Bill sells security. They're successful, rich even, but they see everything as transactions. Buy, sell, profit. They look at the world and see dollar signs. You're different. You look at an old piece of wood and see furniture. You see what it could be, what it should be. You chose carpentry when Bobby offered you a job at his dealership. 20 years ago, remember? He offered you management, 60,000 a year, benefits, company car. You said no, stayed with your tools and your shop and your 35,000 a year of barely scraping by. Bobby called you a fool. Kathy felt sorry for you. Bill couldn't understand. But I understood. You were choosing craft over cash, quality over quantity, meaning over money. That's why you get the combine. What you're holding now, Tommy, documentation for a machine worth between 12 and $18 million, maybe more at the right auction. But here's the thing, son, I'm not telling you what to do with it. That's your decision. Maybe you sell and live comfortable. Maybe you donate to a museum. Maybe you restore her and keep her running. Whatever you choose, just remember, the money ain't the inheritance. The choice is the inheritance. Being a Brennan man means making hard choices for the right reasons. Your loving Grandpa, Earl. Tom read the letter twice, then a third time. The coffee went cold. The kitchen window showed the first gray light of dawn. 12 to $18 million. Tom stood up, walked to the window. Cedar Falls spread out below, streetlights still on, the town asleep. Out there, Bobby was probably dreaming about his farmhouse renovation. Kathy was probably already planning which developer would pay most for that farmland. Bill was probably calculating insurance on his new equipment. And Tom was standing in a rental kitchen, looking at documents that said he was holding 18 million reasons to never worry about money again. He thought about his daughters. Emily was 25, practicing law in Chicago. Hadn't called in 6 months. Sarah was 22, teaching elementary school in Minneapolis. They'd sided with their mother in the divorce, sided with the woman who'd told Tom he'd never amount to anything, who'd left him for a man with a corner office in a German car. $18 million could change that. Could buy their forgiveness, maybe. Their attention, at least. Tom turned back to the table. Spread out the documents Earl had left. The first one made his chest tight. Certificate of Authenticity, Smithsonian Institution, Division of Work and Industry, dated October 2022, 2 years ago. This is to certify that the 1975 International Harvester Model 180 Combine, serial number 0001, is the prototype unit and first example of this model ever manufactured. This machine represents a significant milestone in agricultural mechanization in American industrial history. Signed by the curator. Official seal, real. Tom picked up the next document. Purchase receipt, International Harvester Company, dated March 15, 1976. Amount, $51,300. Paid in full, signed by Earl Brennan and countersigned by an IH executive whose name Tom didn't recognize. Next, test logs, 200 pages, Earl's handwriting, every page dated and detailed. April 12, 1975. First startup, engine runs smooth, minor hydraulic leak addressed. April 15th, first field test. 20-acre spring wheat, September 30th, 1975. End of season 1, 823 hours logged. The logs went on. Technical drawings, photographs. Earl standing next to the brand new combine, 39 years old, lean and strong. Earl shaking hands with men in suits. Earl in the palm, hands on the wheel, grinning at the camera. There were letters, 47 of them, correspondence between Earl and International Harvester. Thank you for your detailed reports. Your observations have been invaluable. Engineers discussing modifications based on Earl's feedback. Earl suggesting improvements. The company implementing them. This wasn't just testing. This was collaboration, partnership. Earl had helped design the modern combine harvester. And then the rejections. Letters from collectors. 1992, 2001, 2015, 2020, each one offering more money. Each one answered the same way, in Earl's increasingly shaky hand. Thank you for your interest, but the machine is not for sale. It will remain with my family. The last document made Tom sit down hard. Professional appraisal. Dr. Margaret Chen, Ph.D., agricultural equipment historian. Dated August 2024, 3 months before Earl died. Current estimated value, conservative, $12 million. Competitive auction with proper publicity and collector interest, 15 to 18 million. Unique circumstances with ideal buyers, 20 million possible. Comparables listed. John Deere prototype sold 2019 for 8.2 million. Case IH experimental unit sold 2021 for 6.5 million. But those were smaller innovations. The IH 1480 rotary system was the revolution, the moment farming changed forever. Tom sat there as the sun came up for real. Light filled the kitchen. Outside, traffic started, people going to work, living normal lives. Not knowing that a broke carpenter in a rental house was staring at documents that said he'd inherited more money than most people earned in 10 lifetimes. His phone rang. Bobby. Tom didn't answer. 5 minutes later, a text. Call me. About the combine. Have an offer. Then Kathy. Tom, please call. We need to talk about contesting the will. For your sake. Then Bill. Tommy got a lawyer's name. He's good. He can help. Tom turned on off his phone, went to his workshop. The garage was small but organized. Tools hung on pegboard, each one outlined in markers so he knew where it belonged. Earl's tools mixed with his own. The 1960 hand plane Earl's father had used. The 1955 Stanley level Earl had carried his whole career. The buck knife from Tom's 16th birthday. Tom picked up the plane, ran his hand over the wood handle, polished smooth by 3 generations of Brennan hands. This tool had built barns and houses and furniture, had shaped wood into useful things, had turned trees into homes. That's what Earl did, turned potential into reality, saw what things could become. Tom set down the plane, went back inside, opened his laptop, started searching. International Harvester 1480, history, significance, articles from farming magazines, technical papers from agricultural colleges, a documentary from 2019 on the History Channel, 8 minutes on the IH 1480, calling it the machine that revolutionized harvesting, mentioning the legendary prototype 001, whereabouts unknown. Not unknown anymore. Tom found Dr. Margaret Chen's website, Professor Emeritus, Iowa State University, author of 4 books on farm equipment evolution, consultant for museums and collectors. Contact information at the bottom. Tom typed an email, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, he wrote, Dr. Chen, my name is Thomas Brennan. My grandfather, Earl Brennan, recently passed away. Among his effects, I found your appraisal of a 1975 International Harvester 1480 combine, serial number 001. I need to speak with you about this machine as soon as possible. He included his phone number, hit send before he could reconsider. Then he went to bed, lay there staring at the ceiling, didn't sleep, couldn't. Somewhere out in that field, a machine worth $18 million was sitting in the weeds, waiting. And Tom had no idea what he was supposed to do about it. Tom woke to his phone buzzing like an angry hornet. Afternoon light cut through the blinds and hard lines. He'd finally fallen asleep around 9 in the morning, still dressed. Earl's letters spread across the bed like evidence at a crime scene. The phone kept buzzing. 7 missed calls. Bobby 3 times, Kathy twice, Bill once, 1 unknown number. Tom sat up, his back protesting. 52 years old felt like 70 right now. He checked the time, 2:47 in the afternoon. He'd slept 5 hours and felt worse than when he'd laid down. The unknown number had left a voicemail. Tom played it while walking to the kitchen, stepping over the documents still scattered on the table. Mr. Brennan, this is Dr. Margaret Chen. I received your email about the International Harvester prototype. I've been waiting 2 years for this call. I can be in Cedar Falls Saturday morning. 9 a.m. Please don't discuss this with anyone until we meet. This is potentially the most significant agricultural equipment discovery in 3 decades. Call me back at this number. Her voice was crisp, educated, but with an undercurrent of excitement she was trying to control. Like a prospector who just spotted gold but didn't want anyone else to know. Tom called her back. She answered on the first ring. Mr. Brennan, thank you for reaching out. Tom, please. Mr. Brennan was my grandfather. A pause, then softer. I'm sorry for your loss. Earl was a remarkable man. We corresponded for 2 years. He wanted everything documented for estate purposes. You knew about the combine. I did the appraisal in August. Earl was very clear about his wishes. He wanted the machine to go to someone who understood its significance, someone who wouldn't just see dollar signs. Tom looked at the documents on his table. The $18 million appraisal. That's a lot of dollar signs not to see. Dr. Chen laughed, dry and knowing. True value and market value are different things, Tom. May I call you Tom? Please. Earl told me about you, said you were the only one who got it. The only one who understood that some things matter more than what they sell for. Tom felt his throat tighten. Did he say anything else? He said you'd know what to do when the time came. I didn't understand then. I think I'm starting to. Saturday morning works, 9 a.m. Good. And Tom, between now and then, I'd recommend not mentioning this to your family. News travels fast in the collector world. The moment people know that Combine exists, you'll have vultures circling. Too late. Someone already knows. What do you mean? Tom told her about the calls, about Bobby pushing to scrap it, about Kathy wanting to contest the will. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then, I need to tell you something. I've received 4 calls in the past week about this machine. 3 collectors, 1 museum. Someone's been shopping it around. Who? One caller identified himself as Vincent Carver. Texas oil money, collects agricultural equipment. The others wouldn't give names, but one had a California area code. And then there was a call from Robert Brennan, claiming to be the owner's grandson. Tom felt his jaw clench. When was Bobby's call? Dr. Chen's voice went cold, October 15th. Earl died November 8th. Bobby had been trying to sell the Combine before Earl was even dead. I see, Dr. Chen said. Yes, I see. Tom thanked her and hung up. Stood in his kitchen, looking at nothing. His cousin, his own blood, circling like a buzzard while Earl lay dying in hospice. Tom's phone buzzed again. Text from Bobby. Need to talk. Important. Scrapyard offer expires tonight. Tom texted back. Not interested. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Don't be stupid about this, Tom. There's real money involved. Tom put the phone down. Walked to his workshop. Needed his hands busy. Needed to do something that made sense. He had a job due Friday. An antique dresser restoration. Simple work. Sand, stain, seal. He could lose himself in it for a few hours. But his mind wouldn't settle. It kept circling back to that Combine sitting in the field. To Earl's letters. To the number 18 million. To Bobby's betrayal. Tom's phone rang again. Not Bobby this time. Unknown number, Texas area code. Tom answered. Brennan. Mr. Brennan, my name is Vincent Carver. I'm a collector of vintage agricultural equipment. I understand you've recently inherited a very special machine. Tom's hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? I'm a man of resources, Mr. Brennan. May I be direct? Go ahead. I'll give you $8 million. Cash. Private sale. Wire transfer by end of business Friday. No auction fees, no publicity, no waiting. You sign a bill of sale, I pick up the machine. You're $8 million richer by the weekend. Dr. Chen said 12 to 18 at auction. Dr. Chen's being optimistic. Auctions are unpredictable. Buyers get cold feet. Reserves don't get met. You could end up with nothing. And even if you hit the high end, auction houses take 20%. That's $3.6 million off the top. Then there's capital gains tax. You're looking at maybe $10 million net after a 6-month wait and a lot of stress. I'm offering $8 million clean. Right now, guaranteed. Tom walked to his workshop window. Could see his truck outside, 14 years old, rust starting along the wheel wells. Could see his neighbor's house, nicer than his rental. Could see the life he'd been living for 52 years, scraping by, making do, 1 bad month from bankruptcy. $8 million would change everything. I need time to think. Carver's voice hardened just a fraction. 48 hours. After that, the offer drops to $6 million. More people find out every day. The market gets fragmented. Right now, I'm your best deal. I'll call you back. Tom hung up, sat down hard on his work stool. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Anger maybe, or just the weight of it all. His phone buzzed, email this time, from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line said Urgent Opportunity IH 1480. Tom opened it, professional letterhead. Morrison Agricultural Foundation. A woman named Helen Morrison, CEO, short message. Mr. Brennan, we understand you've inherited the IH 1480 prototype. The Morrison Foundation preserves agricultural heritage and educates the public about farming history. We would very much like to discuss acquiring this machine for our collection and touring program. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Below that, her credentials. Cornell agriculture degree, 20 years running the foundation, 3 museums under her direction, board member of the Smithsonian's Agriculture Division. 2 offers in one afternoon. Tom wondered how many more were coming. He spent the evening researching, found articles about Vincent Carver, oil heir turned collector, owned 80 million in vintage vehicles and equipment, photos of his climate-controlled warehouses in Houston, row after row of pristine machines that nobody would ever use again, museum pieces for one man's private viewing, found articles about Helen Morrison. Her foundation ran agricultural education programs in 40 states, brought antique equipment to county fairs. Let kids climb on history. The website showed photographs, children sitting in tractor seats, teenagers learning about mechanical systems, teachers using old equipment to explain engineering principles. 2 different futures for Earl's combine, one locked in a warehouse, one touring the country. Tom thought about what Earl would want, knew the answer, but knowing and choosing were different things. 8 million was 8 million, could pay off every debt, could buy a real house, could start a real business, could maybe, just maybe, buy back his daughter's respect. He went to bed but didn't sleep, just lay there watching headlights sweep across the ceiling, thinking about choices and money and what a man's worth when everything's measured in dollars. Saturday morning came cold and gray. Tom was up before dawn, coffee made, documents organized. Dr. Chen had said 9 a.m. At 8:30, Tom heard a truck pull up, looked out the window. Not Dr. Chen's vehicle, Bobby's Mercedes. Tom opened the door before Bobby could knock. "What are you doing here?" Bobby looked rough, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red. "We need to talk." "I said no to the scrapyard." "Forget the scrapyard." Bobby pushed past Tom into the house, saw the documents on the table, froze. "What's all this?" Tom moved between Bobby and the table. "None of your business." Bobby's eyes went wide. He'd seen enough. The Smithsonian certificate, the appraisal. His face went through several expressions: shock, realization, anger. "How much?" Tom didn't answer. "How much is it worth, Tom?" "More than scrap metal." Bobby laughed, bitter and sharp. "No kidding. I've had 3 calls this week. Collectors asking about the combine, offering finder's fees if I can arrange a sale. One guy offered me 10%. Let me guess, Vincent Carver." Bobby had the decency to look ashamed. "It's business, Tom. Perfectly legal. I connect buyer and seller. I get a fee." Before Earl was even dead. "You called Dr. Chen in October." Bobby's face flushed. Earl was dying. Someone had to think practically. "He trusted us, trusted you. He left the farmhouse to me, not you. Because you're successful, because you know how to make money. He left me the combine because he knew I'd do the right thing with it." "And what's the right thing, Tom?" "Let it rot. Turn down $8 million, 10 million, whatever it's worth." Tom felt years of frustration rising. "You don't get it. You never did." "Get what? That you're too proud to take the money? That you'd rather stay broke than be practical? That some things matter more than the bottom line?" Bobby shook his head. "You sound just like him, just like Earl with his talk about legacy and meaning and doing things the right way." "You know what the right way got him? A farm he had to lease out, a house he couldn't maintain, dying in a hospice because he wouldn't sell any land for medical bills. He died with dignity. He died broke, Tom, and you're about to do the same thing. You've got a winning lottery ticket and you're too stubborn to cash it." Tom walked to the door, opened it. "Get out." Bobby stood there, fists clenched. "Fine. But when you're old and broke and alone, remember I tried to help." "Help yourself, you mean? To that finder's fee?" Bobby left, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Tom watched him drive away, his Mercedes kicking up gravel like a statement. At 9 exactly, an old Ford F-150 pulled up, faded red paint, primer spots, but clean and well-maintained. A woman got out, late 60s, gray hair pulled back, work boots and canvas jacket. She carried a leather satchel and walked like someone who'd spent her life on farms. "Dr. Chen? Call me Margaret. You must be Tom." They shook hands. Her grip was firm, her hands calloused. Tom liked her immediately. "Would you like coffee?" "Love some." "Then let's go see this machine." They talked while Tom made coffee. Margaret told him about her career. 35 years studying agricultural equipment. Dissertation on the evolution of harvesting technology. 3 books published. Consultant for museums and collectors worldwide. "The IH-1480 is the holy grail," she said. "I've been researching it since 1989. Knew the prototype existed, but nobody knew where. Collectors have been hunting for it for decades." "How much is it really worth?" Margaret sipped her coffee. Depends on who you ask. To a private collector like Carver, maybe 8 to 10 million. It's a trophy, bragging rights. He'll put it in his warehouse and show it off at parties. And at auction, if we do it right with proper documentation and publicity, we could see 15 to 18 million. Maybe 20 if the right buyers show up and start competing. And to you, to someone who studies this stuff, what's it worth? Margaret set down her cup. It's worth the story it tells, about American ingenuity, about farmers and engineers working together, about the moment when harvesting changed forever and made it possible to feed millions more people. That's worth more than any dollar amount. Tom felt something ease in his chest. That's what Earl would say. Earl was a wise man. Shall we go see her? They took Margaret's truck. She insisted on driving, said she wanted to see the approach, get a feel for the setting. They drove out to the farmhouse. Bobby's Mercedes was gone. Tom directed Margaret around back, across the fields to the back 40. The combine sat there like always, patient, waiting. Margaret stopped the truck 30 yards away, just sat there staring. Tom watched her face, saw something like reverence. Is that really her? That's her. Margaret got out slowly, walked toward the machine like it might disappear. Tom followed, hanging back, letting her have the moment. She circled the combine twice, not touching, just looking. Then she pulled out her phone, started taking photographs, hundreds of them, every angle, every detail. Finally, she spoke. Tom, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've seen machines worth millions. I've evaluated equipment for the Smithsonian, but this, her voice cracked, this is remarkable. It doesn't look like much. That's the beauty of it. She moved closer, ran her hand over the faded paint. See this rust pattern? It's mostly surface. The core structure is sound. Earl protected the important parts. She pointed to details Tom had never noticed. The rotary separator housing, the grain flow system, the cleaning shoe design. Every component, a small revolution. This machine, Margaret said, is the foundation of every modern combine. The innovations Earl tested here, they're in every harvester built for the last 50 years. Farmers around the world use technology that traces back to this exact machine. Tom looked at the combine with new eyes. Tried to see what Margaret saw, what Earl had seen. Can it be restored? Margaret climbed up, examining the engine housing. With proper restoration, absolutely. The mechanical systems are actually in better condition than they look. With the right team, we could have her running again. What would that cost? 60 to 70,000, maybe more if we find unexpected damage. Tom didn't have 60,000, didn't have 6,000 right now. But, Margaret continued, proper restoration would increase the value. Collectors pay premium for working equipment. We're talking 20 to 25 million if she's fully operational. Tom's head spun, the numbers kept getting bigger. Margaret climbed down, pulled a tablet from her bag, showed Tom auction results from the past decade. Farm equipment sales. A 1970 John Deere prototype for 8.2 million, a 1965 Case experimental model for 6.5 million, a 1958 Massey Ferguson test unit for 4.8 million. But those were smaller innovations, Margaret said. Important, yes, but not revolutionary. The IH-1480 rotary system, that changed everything. That's why your machine is worth so much more. She pulled up another file. This one showed correspondence, emails, letters. Tom, I need to tell you something. In the past week, I've received calls about this machine, people asking if I knew where it was, offering money for information. How many people? 4 that I know of. Vincent Carver from Texas, an anonymous buyer with a California number. The Smithsonian, and your cousin Robert. When did Bobby call? October 15th. Earl died November 8th. Tom felt the anger again, cold and hard. Yes, Margaret said quietly, I noticed that too. Did you tell anyone? No, Earl made me promise. He said when the time came, you'd contact me. Until then, the secret was yours. Thank you. They sat in the truck, looking at the combine. Tom, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Margaret turned to face him. Can I give you some advice? Please, don't decide based on the money. I know that sounds crazy when we're talking about $18 million, but that money will complicate your life in ways you can't imagine. Family will come out of nowhere. Friends will want loans. Everyone will have an opinion about what you should do. Decide based on what feels right. What would make Earl proud? What would make you proud 20 years from now? What would you do? Margaret smiled. I'd restore her. Then I'd donate her to a foundation that would tour her around the country. Let every kid in America see the machine that changed farming. Let them touch history, learn from it. That's what Helen Morrison wants to do. Helen's good people. Her foundation does important work. What about the money? The tax write-off would be substantial. Maybe not 18 million in cash, but the donation value plus tax benefits. And you'd know the machine was doing good in the world. Tom sat with that, thought about Earl's words. The money ain't the inheritance. The choice is the inheritance. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did Earl wait? Why not sell years ago when he got those offers? Margaret was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I think he was waiting for you to be ready, for you to be in a place where you could make this choice. If he'd sold it 10 years ago, you wouldn't have learned anything. The money would just be money. But now, after the divorce, after the struggles, after really understanding what matters, now you can choose wisely. Tom felt tears prick his eyes. Blink them away. Take your time, Margaret said. I'll help however I can. Documentation, authentication, auction arrangements if that's what you choose. Just remember, the world has plenty of rich people. It doesn't have enough people who choose meaning over money. They drove back to town. Margaret gave Tom her card, her personal cell number written on the back. Call me day or night. And Tom, for what it's worth, Earl chose right. You're the right person for this. After Margaret left, Tom sat in his house surrounded by documents that said he was rich. On paper, anyway. The combine was his, $12 to $18 million sitting in a field, rusting. His phone rang, unknown number. Tom almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brennan, this is Helen Morrison. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Tom glanced at the clock, 4 in the afternoon. No, it's fine. I sent you an email earlier this week about the foundation. I got it. Haven't had time to respond. I understand. This must be overwhelming. May I take 5 minutes of your time? Go ahead. Helen Morrison had a warm voice, grandmother-like but sharp. She explained the foundation. Started by her father in 1972, dedicated to preserving agricultural history and educating the public. 3 museums, touring programs in 46 states. Last year, 2.3 million people, mostly children, had learned about farming history through their programs. The IH 1480 would be our crown jewel, she said. We'd restore it to full working condition. Then we'd take it to every state, county fairs, schools, agricultural events. Let people see it, touch it, understand how it changed their lives even if they'd never set foot on a farm. What would you pay for it? Helen paused. Tom, I'll be honest, we couldn't afford to compete with private collectors. Our acquisition budget for next year is $6 million. I know that's less than market value. Tom felt something shift. She was being honest, not playing games, not making promises she couldn't keep. But, Helen continued, we could offer something else. Tax deduction on the full appraised value. So if Dr. Chen's appraisal stands at 18 million, you'd get that as a charitable donation deduction. Depending on your tax situation, that could be worth 5 to 6 million in tax savings over several years. Plus, she said, and Tom could hear the smile in her voice, you'd know that millions of kids would learn from this machine. That Earl's legacy would inspire the next generation of farmers and engineers. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. But Tom, one more thing. Yes? Be careful who you talk to. The collector world is small and ruthless. Once word gets out that you have this machine and you're uncertain what to do with it, you'll be pressured from every direction. Trust your gut. Trust Earl's judgment in leaving it to you. Thank you. Tom hung up, sat in the gathering darkness. 2 offers now. Carver's 8 million cash. Morrison's 6 million plus tax benefits, plus knowing the machine would do good. Neither felt quite right yet. His phone buzzed. Text from Bill. Tommy, can we meet? Not about the will, just want to talk. As family. Tom stared at the message. Bill had been the quiet one. The one who stayed out of the Bobby and Kathy drama. The one who'd shaken Tom's hand at the funeral and seemed to mean it. Tom texted back, tomorrow, 1 p.m., coffee shop on Main. Bill responded immediately, see you there. Tom made dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, ate standing at the counter. His rental house felt smaller tonight. Walls closing in. The documents on the table seemed to pulse with possibility and danger. He thought about his daughters, Emily the lawyer, Sarah the teacher, both living their lives without him. Would 18 million change that? Would it buy back the years he'd lost? No. Money didn't work that way. He knew that. But part of him, the tired part, the part that had been fighting uphill his whole life, that part wanted to believe. Tom cleaned up his dinner dishes, went to his workshop, picked up Earl's hand plane, the one from 1960. 3 generations of Brennan hands had held this tool. His great-grandfather, his grandfather, now him. The wood handle was smooth, worn down by decades of use, but the plane still worked, still cut clean shavings, still did the job it was made for 64 years ago. Tom thought about that, about tools that lasted, about work that mattered, about legacy that went beyond bank accounts. He set down the plane, picked up the buck knife Earl had given him at 16. The blade was worn thin from years of sharpening, but it still held an edge, still did its job. These were Earl's real gifts, not the combine, not the 18 million, the understanding that quality lasted, that good work mattered, that a man's worth wasn't his bank account. Tom went back inside, looked at the documents again, 12 to 18 million. More money than he'd ever imagined. But Earl's words kept echoing. The money ain't the inheritance. The choice is the inheritance. Tom still didn't know what choice to make, but he was starting to understand what Earl had been trying to teach him. The money was a test. The question was whether Tom would pass. He went to bed. This time sleep came easier. He dreamed of the combine. But in his dream, it wasn't rusting. It was running, moving through golden wheat fields. Earl at the controls. And standing beside Earl, watching, learning, was a boy. Tom recognized him. The boy was himself at 14, the summer before his father died. In the dream, Earl looked over at young Tom and smiled. "See, Tommy? She's special. Always was." Tom woke before dawn. The dream lingered. He could still hear the combine's engine, still see that golden wheat, still feel what it was like to stand beside Earl and know that everything would be all right. Outside, the first gray light touched the sky. Sunday tomorrow. Tom would meet Bill, maybe get some answers, maybe get some clarity. But tonight, he sat in his dark house with 18 million in paper spread across his table and tried to figure out what kind of man he wanted to be. Sunday came with frost on the windows. Tom woke early, made coffee, stood in his workshop watching the sun come up. The tools hung on their pegboard shadows, each one in its place. Order in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. In 6 days, his life had gone from simple and broke to complicated and potentially rich. He wasn't sure which was worse. The meeting with Bill was at 1. Tom had 5 hours to kill. He spent them working on the dresser restoration, letting his hands do what they knew while his mind spun through possibilities. Sand, stain, seal, simple work, honest work, the kind Earl had taught him to value. At 12:30, Tom cleaned up, changed into a fresh shirt, drove into town. Main Street looked the same as always. Hardware store, diner, insurance office, Bill's insurance office. Small town Iowa on a Sunday afternoon. Church crowd just getting out, families heading to lunch. Normal lives lived by normal people who weren't sitting on $18 million they didn't know what to do with. The coffee shop was called Martha's, named after some woman who'd started it in 1952 and been dead for 30 years. It smelled like coffee and pie and small-town comfort. Bill was already there, sitting in a back booth, 2 cups of coffee on the table. Tom slid in across from him. Bill looked tired, 50 years old but aging fast. Thinning hair, soft middle, the look of a man who'd spent his life behind a desk. "Thanks for meeting me. You said it wasn't about the will." "It's not." Bill wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For not standing up to Bobby. For going along with the idea that you got screwed. For not saying what I should have said at the lawyer's office, which was that Earl knew exactly what he was doing, that if he left you that combine, there was a reason." Tom sipped his coffee. "How did you know?" Bill smiled, sad and knowing, "Because I've spent my whole life watching Bobby chase money and Kathy chase status, and both of them missing the point. And I've spent my whole life playing it safe, selling insurance, making sure everyone's protected from disaster. But you know what I've learned?" "What?" "Safety's overrated. So's success. Bobby's got 3 dealerships and an ulcer. Kathy's got a mansion and a marriage held together by real estate deals. And me, I've got a business that runs itself and kids who think I'm boring." "You got a good life, Bill." I've got a safe life. There's a difference. Bill leaned forward. Earl used to talk to me sometimes. Late at night when I'd stop by the farm, he'd be sitting on that porch drinking whiskey, looking out at the fields. And he'd tell me stories about Korea, about testing that combine, about choices he'd made. What kind of choices? Bill looked out the window. Said he could have sold that machine back in the 90s. Guy offered him $250,000. Earl was struggling then. Farm prices down, equipment costs up. That money would have saved him years of worry. Why didn't he sell? Bill turned back to Tom. He said some things you keep not because of what they're worth, but because of what they mean. Said that combine represented the best work he'd ever done. The moment when he helped change farming forever. Selling it would be like selling his own history. Tom felt his chest tighten. That sounds like Earl. He also said something else. Bill's voice dropped. Said he was keeping it for you. This was 5 years ago, Tom, long before any of us thought about wills or inheritance. He said you were the only one who'd understand. Understand what? That legacy isn't about leaving money. It's about leaving meaning. They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed with small town conversation around them. Someone ordering pie. Someone asking about the weather. Normal life. Tom, Bobby came to see me yesterday after he left your place. What did he want? Bill's jaw clenched. He wanted me to join him in contesting the will. Said we could force a three-way split. You keep the combine, but we all share the money when you sell it. What did you say? I told him to go to hell. Tom felt something ease in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. I should have said it sooner. Should have told him he was wrong to call those collectors while Earl was dying. Should have stood up for you at the will reading. Bill reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Tom opened it. Inside, a check. $50,000. Tom's hand shook. Bill, I can't. It's not charity. It's a loan. 0 interest. Pay me back whenever. Or don't. I don't care. Why? Bill's eyes were wet. Because Earl would want me to help you. Because you're going to need money for restoration if you decide to go that route. Because Bobby's going to make this hard and you need resources to fight him. Bobby's going to contest the will? He's hiring Patricia Monroe tomorrow. Best estate lawyer in the state. He's going all in. Tom set down the check. His hands felt numb. Bill, that combine is worth $12 to $18 million. Bill didn't look surprised. I figured it was something like that. Word's getting around in the collector world. How? Bobby. He's been calling everyone, trying to drum up interest, probably hoping to force you into a sale by creating a bidding war. Tom felt anger rise, cold and sharp. He's trying to manipulate the market. He's trying to get what he thinks he deserves. Bill shook his head. Bobby's always been like this. Dad spoiled him, being the oldest. Bobby grew up thinking the world owed him success. And when Earl left him just the farmhouse, he took it as an insult. The farmhouse is worth $800,000. To Bobby, that's chump change compared to what you got. He's not thinking about the house. He's thinking about the millions he doesn't have. What about Kathy? Bill shrugged. Kathy will go whichever way the money flows. Right now, she's staying neutral. But if Bobby's lawsuit looks like it might work, she'll join in. That's just how she is. Tom picked up the check again. $50,000. More than he'd made last year. Bill, I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it to do what's right, whatever that is. They talked for another hour. Bill told stories about Earl, about visits to the farm, about lessons learned, about regrets for playing it safe his whole life. You know what I wish I'd done, Bill asked. Taken that trip to Alaska. Always wanted to. Talked about it for 20 years. Never went. Too risky, too expensive, too impractical. Now I'm 50 and my knees hurt and I probably never will. It's not too late, isn't it? Bill smiled. Maybe that's the real gift Earl gave you, Tom. Not the money. The permission to choose meaning over safety. The chance to do something that matters. They parted in the parking lot. Bill shook Tom's hand, held it longer than necessary. Whatever you decide, I've got your back. Family's supposed to mean something. Tom drove home with Bill's check on the passenger seat. $50,000, the restoration money, the fight Bobby money, the do what's right money. At home, Tom called Margaret Chen. Margaret, it's Tom Brennan. I need to ask you something. Anything. If I restore the combine, can you recommend someone? Margaret was quiet for a moment. There's a man in Des Moines, Frank Morrison, 60 years old, worked for International Harvester back in the 70s. was actually on the factory floor when prototype 001 rolled out. Can you send me his contact information? I'll do better than that. I'll call him myself. Get him interested. Margaret, one more thing. How much would restoration really cost? With Frank's team, probably 65,000, maybe 70 if we find problems. I've got 50,000 from Bill. Can I borrow the rest? Tom, if you're serious about this, I can help arrange financing. Use the combine as collateral. Any bank will loan against a $12 million asset. Let's do it. After he hung up, Tom sat in his kitchen. The decision was made. He was restoring the combine, but he still didn't know what came after. Sell to Carver? Donate to Morrison? Something else? His phone rang. Unknown number. Tom's stomach tightened. He answered. Mr. Brennan, this is Patricia Monroe. I'm an attorney representing your cousin, Robert Brennan. I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that we'll be filing a petition to contest Earl Brennan's will tomorrow morning. On what grounds? Lack of testamentary capacity and undue influence. We believe Earl was not of sound mind when he executed the will, and that you may have exerted pressure on him to disproportionately benefit yourself. That's a lie. Monroe's voice stayed level, professional, cold. That will be for the court to decide. We're also seeking a temporary injunction preventing you from selling, moving, or significantly altering the combine until the matter is resolved. You can't do that. We can and we will. The machine is potentially a marital asset if the will is voided. Judge Morrison will hear our motion Wednesday morning. Tom felt his jaw clench. I'll see you in court. Mr. Brennan, let me be frank. This will get ugly, expensive, public. Your cousin is prepared to spend whatever it takes. If you're smart, you'll settle. Agree to split the proceeds. Everyone walks away happy, or everyone walks away with less than they deserve. That's your choice. But think carefully. Legal fees will eat up a substantial portion of any inheritance, and family relationships, once broken, rarely heal. She hung up. Tom sat there, phone in hand, anger burning in his chest. Bobby wasn't just contesting the will. He was attacking Tom's character, claiming undue influence, calling Tom a manipulator who'd taken advantage of a dying old man. Tom called the lawyer, Howard Mitchell. Mitchell, it's Tom Brennan. Bobby's filing a contest tomorrow. I know. Patricia Monroe called me an hour ago. Professional courtesy. Can they win? Mitchell sighed. Probably not. Earl's video testimony is powerful, and Dr. Russell's cognitive evaluation is solid, but they can drag this out for months. Make it expensive. Make it painful. What should I do? Fight or settle? What would Earl want? Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Earl would want you to stand up for what's right. He spent his whole life doing that. Korea, the farm, testing that combined. He never took the easy path. Then I fight. Good. I'll file our response. We'll see Monroe in court Wednesday. Tom hung up, looked around his rental house, at the tools in the workshop, at the documents on the table, at the life he'd built from scraps and stubbornness. Bobby wanted a fight. Tom would give him one. Monday morning, Tom drove to the bank, met with a loan officer, showed her the appraisal, the authentication documents, Margaret Chen's letterhead. The officer's eyes went wide. Mr. Brennan, if this is accurate, we can certainly arrange financing. It's accurate. For restoration costs, you said $75,000? Yes. At 8%, we can do that easily. Use the combine as collateral. If you default, we seize the asset. Tom signed papers. By noon, he had $75,000 in his account. More money than he'd had in his entire life. He called Margaret Chen. Margaret, it's done. I've got the money. Can you set up the meeting with Frank Morrison? Already done. He can meet you tomorrow at his shop. 9 a.m. I'll be there too. Margaret, about the lawsuit. I heard. Small world in Cedar Falls. Will it affect the restoration? Not unless Bobby gets his injunction. And even then, restoration is maintenance, not alteration. We'll argue it's necessary preservation of a valuable asset. Thank you. Tom, one more thing. I got another call this morning from Vincent Carver. What did he want? He's raising his offer, $10 million, cash. He said to tell you the offer expires Friday. He's trying to pressure me before the court hearing. Probably. But Tom, that's a lot of money. $10 million in hand versus years of fighting Bobby in court. I know. Think about it. Tom spent the afternoon working, finished the dresser restoration, delivered it to the client, got paid $300. Pocket change compared to millions, but it felt honest, clean, earned. That evening, his phone rang. Emily, his older daughter. They hadn't spoken in 8 months. Hi, Dad. Emily. Tom's throat went tight. How are you? Good. Busy. Listen, I heard about Grandpa Earl. I'm sorry I couldn't make the funeral. It's okay. You're in Chicago. It's a long way. Emily cleared her throat. Dad, I also heard about the inheritance. Tom closed his eyes. Of course she had. Small town. News travels fast. What did you hear? That you got some kind of valuable farm equipment. That Uncle Bobby's contesting the will. Both true. Dad, are you okay? Do you need help? Tom felt tears prick his eyes. She was asking, reaching out. For the first time in years, his daughter was asking if he needed help. I'm managing. Got a good lawyer. Is it true it's worth millions? Tom thought about lying, keeping it simple. But Emily was a lawyer. She'd find out anyway. 12 to 18 million, maybe more. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Dad, that's incredible. Life-changing. Maybe. What do you mean, maybe? Dad, you've been struggling for years. This could solve everything. Could complicate everything, too. Another pause, then, softer, Dad, I know we haven't been close. I know I sided with Mom in the divorce. But I want you to know, if you need legal help, I'm here. Tom sat down hard. You'd help me? You're my father. Of course I'd help. Even though I'm broke? Even though I disappointed you? Emily's voice broke. Dad, you never disappointed me. I disappointed me for letting Mom turn me against you. They talked for an hour about the divorce, about missed years, about regrets, about the combine and Earl and what it all meant. Emily told him about her life, her job at a corporate firm, her engagement to another lawyer, the wedding plan for next summer. Will you come, she asked, to the wedding? If you want me there. I want you there. I want you to walk me down the aisle. Tom cried then. Couldn't help it. Years of pain and distance and loss pouring out. Emily cried too, 200 miles apart, connected by a phone line and broken hearts trying to heal. After they hung up, Tom sat in the dark. Tomorrow he'd meet Frank Morrison, start the restoration. But tonight he'd gotten his daughter back, and that felt more valuable than any amount of money. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. Tom drove to Des Moines, following Margaret's directions to an industrial area near the airport. Frank Morrison's shop was a metal building with a Morrison Restoration painted on the side in faded letters. 3 bays, all full of equipment in various stages of repair. A 1960s tractor, a 1950s plow, a combine from the 80s. Frank Morrison was waiting outside, 60 years old, built like a fire plug. With oil-stained hands and sharp eyes, he wore overalls and a Vietnam veteran's cap. You must be Tom Brennan. They shook hands. Frank's grip was crushing. Margaret tells me you've got something special. Come see for yourself. They took 2 trucks, caravanning out to the farm. Bobby's Mercedes was there again. Tom felt his jaw tighten, but he didn't stop, just drove straight to the back 40. Frank got out of his truck slowly, walked toward the combine like he was approaching a ghost, stopped 30 feet away. Son of a bitch. You worked on these? Frank's voice was hoarse. I was on the factory floor when this exact machine rolled out. March 1975, I was 22 years old. Fresh out of Vietnam, International Harvester hired veterans, gave us good jobs. This was the first day of my first week. He walked closer, put his hand on the metal. I watched them build her, every component, every system. The engineers were so excited, kept saying this was going to change everything. And they were right. Can you restore her? Frank walked around the combine, climbed up, looked inside the cab, checked the engine housing, examined the rotary separator. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, he climbed down. Yeah, I can restore her. Take about 10 weeks. Need 3 guys and $70,000. I've got the money. Frank looked at Tom hard. Why are you doing this? Margaret says you could sell right now for millions. Why spend money making her pretty first? Tom thought about Earl's letters, about choices and meaning and legacy, because some things deserve to be done right. Frank smiled. Then we understand each other. When do you want to start? They made plans. Frank would arrange transport to his shop, start disassembly next Monday. Tom would get the legal injunction sorted first. If Bobby succeeded in blocking the restoration, they'd fight that too. Margaret pulled Tom aside before they left. Tom, I need to tell you something. Word's really getting out now. I've had 6 calls yesterday, museums, collectors, even a buyer from Japan. What are they offering? The Japanese buyer went to 15 million, sight unseen, just based on authentication documents. Tom felt dizzy. 15 million. There's more. Vincent Carver called me directly. Said he's going to 12 million. Final offer. Said if you don't accept by Friday, he's out. He's trying to force my hand before the court hearing. Probably. But Tom, these are real offers. Life-changing money. I know. What are you going to do? Tom looked back at the combine, at Frank Morrison standing beside it, hand on the metal, face full of memory and respect. I'm going to restore her first, then decide. Margaret nodded. That's the right move. Restored, she's worth more anyway. It's not about the money, isn't it? Tom met her eyes. If it was just about money, I'd have taken Carver's first offer. 8 million would change my life. But Earl didn't leave me 8 million. He left me a choice. And you're choosing the hard path. I'm choosing the right path. There's a difference. Wednesday morning, Tom stood in the county courthouse. Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. Wood paneling, state flag, American flag, the machinery of justice. Bobby sat with his lawyer, Patricia Monroe. Expensive suit, confident smile. Kathy sat behind Bobby. She'd chosen sides, after all. Tom sat with Howard Mitchell. His lawyer was 70-something, but sharp as ever. Don't let them rattle you, Mitchell whispered. Just tell the truth. Monroe stood when the judge entered, presented her case. Earl Brennan had been 89 years old, on multiple medications, showing signs of confusion. The will was executed under suspicious circumstances. Tom had been visiting frequently in the final months, had opportunity to exert undue influence. She called a witness, one of Earl's farmhands, young guy, maybe 30, nervous in a suit. Did you notice any changes in Mr. Brennan's behavior in his final year? Yes, ma'am. He seemed forgetful sometimes, would repeat himself. Forget what day it was. Monroe nodded. Thank you, no further questions. Mitchell stood for cross-examination. How often did you see Mr. Brennan? Maybe once a week, when I came to check the livestock lease. And these incidents of forgetfulness, how often did they occur? The farmhand shifted. I don't know, a few times. A few times over 12 months? In a man who was 89 years old? I guess so. Did Mr. Brennan ever forget your name? No, sir. Forget how to operate equipment? No, sir. Forget important information about the farm? The farmhand looked at Bobby, then back at Mitchell. No, sir. He was always real sharp about farm business. Mitchell smiled. Thank you. No further questions. Monroe called another witness. Earl's doctor asked about the medications, about age-related cognitive decline. The doctor admitted that Earl's medications could cause confusion in some patients. But on cross-examination, Mitchell asked one question. Doctor, did you ever evaluate Earl Brennan for dementia or cognitive impairment? No, he never showed symptoms that warranted evaluation. Mitchell turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to play a video. They set up a laptop, played Earl's testimony. The old man's face filled the screen, clear-eyed, firm-voiced, explaining exactly why he'd made the will the way he did. The courtroom was silent. When it ended, Judge Morrison looked at Monroe. Counselor, do you have evidence that contradicts his testimony? Monroe stood. Your Honor, we believe the video was recorded under duress. Do you have proof of that? Monroe hesitated. Not at this time. Then I'm denying your injunction. The will stands pending full probate review. Mr. Tom Brennan retains full rights to his inheritance, including the right to maintain and preserve it. Monroe tried to argue. The judge cut her off. Counselor, I've seen enough. Unless you have compelling evidence of fraud or undue influence, this case is going nowhere. I suggest your client accept his grandfather's wishes. Bobby's face went red. He stood up. This is bullshit. That combined should be divided equally. The judge's gavel cracked down. Mr. Brennan, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. Bobby stormed out. Kathy followed. Monroe gathered her papers, face tight. In the hallway, Bobby confronted Tom. This isn't over. Yeah, Bobby, it is. You really think you deserve 18 million while we get scraps? I think Earl made his choice, and I'm honoring it. Bobby stepped closer. His face was inches from Tom's. You always were his favorite, the golden boy who could do no wrong. Well, guess what, Tom? Being broke and noble doesn't make you better than me. Tom held his ground. No, but choosing meaning over money does. Bobby shoved him. Tom didn't shove back, just stood there. Howard Mitchell stepped between them. Robert, walk away, now. Bobby pointed at Tom. You're making a mistake. You're going to lose everything. Tom watched Bobby storm off. Kathy lingered. Tom, I'm sorry. Bobby pushed me into this. No, Kathy, you chose. She flinched, then followed Bobby to the parking lot. Tom stood in the courthouse hallway. The injunction was denied. The restoration could proceed. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time since Earl died, Tom felt something like certainty. He was on the right path. The hard path. The path Earl had laid out for him. His phone buzzed. Text from Emily. How'd it go? Tom smiled. Type back, won the first round. Emily replied immediately. Proud of you, Dad. 3 words, but they meant everything. Tom put his phone away and walked out into the Iowa afternoon. The combine was waiting. Frank Morrison was waiting. The restoration was waiting. And somewhere, Tom thought, Earl was watching, knowing that his grandson had chosen right. The flatbed truck arrived on Monday morning just after dawn. Tom stood in the back 40 watching the crew prepare the combine for transport. 3 men with chains and winches, working with the kind of careful precision that expensive things demand. Frank Morrison directed them, his voice calm and sure. This wasn't his first historic machine. The combine looked even more pathetic being lifted. 33 years of sitting had settled it into the earth like it belonged there. The tires were rotted flat, rust cascaded off in sheets as they secured the chains. A family of mice evacuated from the engine housing, scattering across the frozen ground. Tom felt something twist in his chest. This machine had sat here his entire adult life. Through his marriage, his divorce, his daughters growing up and moving away. Through good years and bad, through Earl's slow decline, a silent witness to time passing. Now it was leaving, going to be remade, restored, or maybe just made ready for sale. Tom still didn't know which. Frank walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. She's gonna look different when you see her next. You ready for that? I don't know what I'm ready for. Frank nodded like he understood. Restoration changes things, makes them better in some ways, but you lose the history, the patina, the evidence of time. Is that bad? Frank shrugged. Depends on what you value, original or renewed, past or future. The combine rose on the flatbed, chains creaking. The crew secured it with straps and blankets, protected like a treasure, which Tom supposed it was. See you at the shop tomorrow, Frank said. We'll start disassembly. You are welcome to watch. Some owners like to be there for it. I'll be there. Frank climbed into his truck. The convoy pulled away, the combine riding high above the pickup bed, heading to Des Moines, heading toward transformation. Tom stood alone in the field. The grass was flattened where the combine had sat for 3 decades. A perfect outline, a ghost of what had been. In a few months, you wouldn't be able to tell anything had been there at all. His phone buzzed, text from Bobby, saw them take the combine. Running scared, Tom didn't reply, just turned and walked back to his truck. That night, Tom couldn't sleep. He lay in bed thinking about Frank's words. Original or renewed, past or future. Was he honoring Earl's legacy or destroying it? Was restoration, preservation, or erasure? At 2 in the morning, he gave up, made coffee, sat in his workshop, picked up Earl's hand plane, ran his thumb over the maker's mark, Stanley. 1960, this tool was original, worn but authentic. Every scratch and dent told a story. But it still worked, still cut wood, still served its purpose. Was that because it was original or because someone had maintained it? Tom set down the plane, picked up the buck knife. The blade had been sharpened so many times it was thin as a willow leaf. Original? No, not anymore. The knife Earl had given him at 16 was mostly gone, but it was still Earl's knife, still carried the same meaning. Maybe restoration wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about carrying it forward. Tom went back to bed. This time he slept. Tuesday morning, Tom drove to Des Moines. Morrison Restoration sat in an industrial park between a welding shop and a truck repair depot. The building was metal, painted white, with 3 huge bay doors. All 3 were open despite the November cold. Inside was a cathedral to machinery, high ceilings with chain hoists, bright lights everywhere, the smell of methadol and oil and honest work. 3 bays, 3 projects, and in the center bay, Earl's combine. Frank and his crew were already at work. They'd pressure wash the exterior, removing 30 years of dirt and bird droppings and rust dust. What remained was a skeleton of what it had been. Faded red paint, pitted metal, but the bones were good. Tom could see that now. Frank saw him and waved him over. Come look at this. Tom followed Frank to the engine housing. Frank pointed inside. See that? Your grandfather coated all the critical components with Cosmoline before he parked it. Preserved everything. The engine block, the hydraulics, the separator bearings, all protected. Tom peered inside. The metal gleamed under the shop lights. No rust, no corrosion. He knew, Tom said. Even back then, he knew this machine mattered. Frank nodded. Smart man. This is going to make restoration much easier. I was expecting to replace half the internal components. Now we might only need 10%. What does that mean for cost? Probably come in under budget, maybe 60,000 instead of 70. Tom felt relief wash over him. Every dollar mattered. Over the next weeks, Tom became a regular at Morrison Restoration. He'd finish his carpentry work by 3, then drive to Des Moines, watch the team work until dark, sometimes helping, mostly learning. Frank's crew was 3 men, all Vietnam veterans, all about Frank's age. They worked with the easy competence of men who'd spent their lives with machines. There was Roy, the metal worker, 62, thin as wire, hands scarred from 50 years of welding. He could make metal flow like water. There was Dennis, the engine specialist, 65, with thick glasses and thicker hands. He could listen to an engine and diagnose problems like a doctor with a stethoscope. And there was Pete, the painter, 60, covered in tattoos from wrist to shoulder. One for each year he survived. He could match any color, any shade, any patina. They worked in silence mostly, the comfortable quiet of men who knew their craft. But during breaks, they told stories. Vietnam stories, factory stories, stories about machines and the men who built them. One afternoon, Dennis was rebuilding the engine. Tom watched him work, pulling pistons, inspecting cylinders, measuring tolerances with calipers. You know what's amazing about this engine, Dennis said? It's simple. Modern engines, they've got computers, sensors, electronic injection. Complicated. But this, mechanical fuel pump, points and condenser ignition. A man can understand it, fix it with hand tools. Is that better? Dennis shrugged. Different. I like machines I can understand. Machines that don't need a diagnostic computer to tell me what's wrong. Frank overheard and laughed. Dennis is old school. Thinks anything made after 1975 is too complicated. Damn right, Dennis grinned. Give me a machine I can fix with a socket wrench and a hammer. That's honest engineering. Tom understood. He felt the same way about woodworking. Give him hand tools and solid wood. None of this particle board and pneumatic nail gun nonsense. The restoration progressed in stages. Week 1 was disassembly. Every component photographed, tagged, organized. The combine came apart like a puzzle, revealing its secrets piece by piece. Week 2 was metalwork. Roy spent days with sandblaster and grinder, removing rust without damaging original metal. Sparks flew, the air filled with the smell of hot steel. Where rust had eaten through, Roy welded patches, perfect seams, invisible repairs. Week 3 was mechanical restoration. Dennis rebuilt the engine. New pistons, new rings, new bearings, but the block was original. The crankshaft was original. The soul of the machine preserved. The hydraulic system got overhauled. New hoses, new seals, but original pumps and cylinders. The rotary separator, Earl's revolutionary design, was cleaned and rebalanced but not altered. History preserved. Week 4 was the separator mechanism. This was the heart of the combine, the innovation that changed everything. Frank worked on it personally, checking clearances, adjusting tensions, making sure it would work exactly as Earl had tested it 50 years ago. Tom watched him work one evening. Frank's hands moved with certainty born from experience. You really were there when they built this? Frank didn't look up from February, March 18th, 1975. I remember because it was my first week. Just back from Vietnam. Still had nightmares. Still jumped at loud noises. But the factory was good for me. Loud, busy, purposeful. Gave me something to focus on besides the war. What was it like, seeing this machine built? Frank paused, wrench in hand. It was like watching the future. The engineers kept saying they were changing everything. And we believed them. You could feel it. This wasn't just another combine. This was the one. Did you ever think you'd see it again? Frank smiled. Never. I figured it was in some museum or collector's warehouse. Finding out it's been sitting in a field 50 miles from where I live? That's something like fate. You believe in fate? Frank went back to his work. I believe some things happen for reasons we don't understand until later. You inheriting this machine, me being the one who restores it, that's not accident. That's Earl's plan playing out. What do you think his plan was? Frank tightened a bolt, torqued it to exact specification. I think Earl wanted someone to understand what this machine represents. Not just agricultural history, but the idea that one person, one good idea, one moment of innovation can change the world. Week 5 was paint preparation. Pete spent days sanding, priming, filling tiny imperfections. The combine sat in the spray booth, bare metal gleaming under work lights, ready to be reborn. Tom visited that evening. Pete was mixing paint, checking color samples against chips from the original paint. Getting the color right is the hardest part, Pete said. Modern paints are different, better in some ways, but they don't match exactly. I'm mixing custom to get as close to original International Harvester red as possible. Why does it matter? It's going to look new either way. Pete looked at Tom like he was crazy. It matters because it matters. This isn't just any red, it's IH red. Specific shade, specific meaning. Farmers who use these machines, they'll know if it's wrong. Will they really? Pete nodded. They'll know, maybe not consciously, but they'll look at it and something will feel off. Color is memory. Get it wrong and you break the connection to the past. Tom thought about that. Color is memory, details is meaning. Maybe that's what restoration was. Honoring the small things that carried big truths. Week 6 was painting. Tom wasn't allowed in the spray booth. Too much dust. But he watched through the windows. Pete in his respirator, spray gun in hand, laying down coat after coat of red. The color built up slowly, thin layers becoming solid. The combine emerging from primer gray into International Harvester red. It took 3 days. Base coat, color coats, clear coat. Each layer had to cure before the next. But when Pete finally opened the booth, the combine gleamed. Tom stood there stunned. The machine looked brand new, better than new, like it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1975. The red was deep and rich. The chrome accents blazed. The decals, reproduced from original specifications, were crisp and perfect. Frank walked up beside him. What do you think? Tom couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, I think Earl would be proud. Week 7 was reassembly. Everything came back together in reverse order. Each component cleaned, inspected, installed. The engine dropped back into the housing. The hydraulic lines connected. The separator mechanism bolted in place. The machine rebuilding itself. Tom was there every day now. His carpentry business was suffering. Jobs delayed. Clients annoyed. But he didn't care. This felt more important. One evening, Dennis was installing the ignition system. Tom was handing him tools. You know what I like about you? Dennis said. You care about getting it right. A lot of owners, they just want it done fast. Want to flip it for profit, but you're here, learning, understanding. I'm trying to honor my grandfather. Dennis nodded. That's good. That's right. A man's legacy shouldn't be rushed. They worked in companionable silence. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, the shop lights blazed. Illuminating work. Illuminating purpose. Week 8 brought visitors. Word had spread through the restoration community. People wanted to see the legendary prototype. Frank's shop became a pilgrimage site. Margaret Chen came twice, documenting every stage, taking photos, recording video. She was writing an article for Agricultural History Quarterly, The Return of a Legend. Helen Morrison from the foundation visited, spent an afternoon watching the team work. Afterwards, she pulled Tom aside. Mr. Brennan, what you're doing is remarkable. This machine will inspire millions. Thank you. Helen hesitated. Have you given more thought to our offer? I'm still deciding. I understand, but I want you to know our offer stands. $6 million plus tax benefits. And the knowledge that Earl's legacy will live on in education. Tom nodded. I appreciate that. Helen handed him her card again, even though he already had 3. Call me anytime, day or night. Vincent Carver called twice, each time raising his offer, $12 million, then $14 million, then $15 million if Tom committed by end of the month. Tom didn't commit, just thanked him and said he'd decide after restoration was complete. Bobby called once. Tom didn't answer, but Bobby left a voicemail. Tom, this is stupid. You're spending money on a machine you're just going to sell anyway. Take Carver's offer. We split it 3 ways. Everyone wins. Tom deleted the message. Week 9 was testing. Dennis started the engine for the first time in 33 years. The shop fell silent. Everyone watching, waiting. Dennis turned the key. The starter cranked. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the engine caught, coughed, smoothed out, began to rumble with that deep diesel sound that meant power and purpose. The shop erupted in cheers. Roy actually hugged Dennis. Pete whooped. Frank just stood there, tears running down his face. Tom felt his own eyes burn. The machine was alive again, running, functional. 50 years after it first started, prototype 001 was working. They ran it for an hour, checking systems, listening for problems, finding none. The engine purred. The hydraulics responded. The separator spun at exact specifications. It's perfect, Dennis said. Better than new because now we know all the tolerances. Now we know she runs true. Week 10 was final details. Chrome polishing, glass cleaning, tire mounting. The combine sat complete, restored, beautiful. Frank called Tom at 7 in the morning on Friday. She's done, come see. Tom drove to Des Moines. His heart hammered the whole way. This was it, the moment of truth. He pulled up to Morrison Restoration. The bay doors were closed. Unusual. Tom walked to the small door on the side, knocked. Frank opened it, grinned. Close your eyes. What? Just do it. Tom closed his eyes. Frank took his arm, led him inside. Tom could smell paint and oil and fresh rubber. Okay, open. Tom opened his eyes. The combine sat center stage under all the shop lights, gleaming, magnificent. Every inch of her perfect. The red paint blazed. The chrome sparkled. The serial plate shone like jewelry. IH 1480-001. But it wasn't just beautiful. It looked purposeful, powerful, like it was ready to harvest 10,000 acres, like it could run forever. Tom walked around it slowly, touched the paint, looked inside the cab. Everything restored, but everything authentic. Modern and vintage at once, past and future merged. She's perfect. Frank stood beside him. 70 days, $62,000. Best work we've ever done. Worth every penny. What are you going to do with her? Tom looked at the combine, the machine that had changed farming, the machine Earl had tested and preserved and left to him. The choice that was supposed to teach him something. I don't know yet, but I know she deserves better than Vincent Carver's warehouse. Frank nodded. That she does. That night, Tom couldn't sleep again. He lay in bed thinking about the combine, about offers and obligations and what Earl really wanted. At midnight, he got up, went to his kitchen, pulled out Earl's letters, read them again for the 100th time. The money ain't the inheritance. The choice is the inheritance. What choice, Grandpa? Tom whispered to the empty room. What am I supposed to choose? His phone rang. Strange for midnight. Tom answered. Dad? Emily, is everything okay? Yeah, sorry to call so late. I couldn't sleep. Been thinking about you and that combine. Me too. Emily was quiet for a moment. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you restoring it? If you're just going to sell it, why spend the money? Tom thought about that. Because it deserves to be honored. Because Earl spent 50 years protecting it. Because some things are worth doing right even if they don't make financial sense. Emily laughed softly. That's exactly what Grandpa would say. I know. Dad, I've been thinking about the wedding. About you walking me down the aisle. Tom's chest tightened. Emily, I'd be honored. I want to pay for your suit and your hotel, and I want you to sit at the family table, not off to the side. Emily, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I've been a bad daughter. Let me try to make it right. You're not a bad daughter. You're my daughter. That's all that matters. They talked for another hour about the wedding, about Emily's fiancé, about Tom's life, about the combine and Earl and choices. After they hung up, Tom sat in the dark. His daughter was back in his life. That was worth more than $15 million, worth more than anything. But the combine still waited. The choice still waited. Tom pulled out his laptop, searched Vincent Carver's name, found photos of his collection, rows of pristine machines behind velvet ropes. Beautiful but dead, preserved but purposeless. Then he searched Morrison Agricultural Foundation, found videos of their tours, children climbing on antique tractors, teenagers learning about engineering, teachers using history to explain science, machines alive and teaching. Two futures for Earl's combine, one locked away, one shared with the world. Tom knew which Earl would choose, but was that the right choice for Tom? The phone rang again, 3 in the morning. Tom answered. Mr. Brennan, this is Dr. James Walsh from the Smithsonian. I apologize for the late hour. I'm calling from London. Different time zones. What can I do for you, Dr. Walsh? I understand you have the IH 1480 prototype. I'd like to make an offer. $20 million. We'll create a permanent exhibit. American agricultural innovation. Your grandfather's story told to millions of visitors every year. Tom sat up. 20 million. The machine belongs in the Smithsonian, Mr. Brennan. It's that significant. This is American history. It should be preserved and shared at the national level. I need to think about it, of course. But Mr. Brennan, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you and for America. After Walsh hung up, Tom sat staring at nothing. $20 million, the Smithsonian, national recognition. But something felt wrong. The Smithsonian was in Washington, behind glass, static, important but separate from the people whose lives it had changed. Morrison's foundation toured, went to county fairs, let kids touch history. That felt more like Earl, more like the man who'd spent his life working with his hands, teaching with his actions. Tom made coffee, watched the sun come up, made a decision. He called Helen Morrison at 8 in the morning. "Helen, it's Tom Brennan. I've made a choice." Helen Morrison answered on the second ring. Her voice was cautious, hopeful. Tom could hear both. "I'm listening." Tom looked out his kitchen window at the Iowa morning. Frost on the grass, bare trees against gray sky. The same view he'd had for 3 years in this rental house. The same view that would change no matter what choice he made. "I want to donate the combine to your foundation. Full donation, no sale. Just give it to the kids who need to see it." Silence on the other end. Then softly, "Tom, are you sure? That's $20 million you're turning down. The Smithsonian offer alone could set you up for life." "I'm sure. Earl didn't preserve this machine for 50 years so it could sit behind glass in Washington. He preserved it so it could teach, so it could inspire. That's what your foundation does." Helen's voice broke. "Tom, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take good care of her. Say you'll let every farm kid in America sit in that cab and dream. I promise. We'll tour her to all 50 states, every county fair, every agricultural show, every school that will have us. I promise. Then she's yours." After he hung up, Tom sat in his kitchen. The morning sun broke through clouds. Light filled the room. He'd just given away $20 million. Given away financial security. Given away the easy path. And he felt lighter than he had in months. His phone rang immediately. Margaret Chen. "Tom, I just got off the phone with Helen. Is it true?" "It's true." "Tom, do you understand the tax implications? A $20 million charitable donation, that's $6 to $7 million in tax deductions spread over 5 years. I don't have income to deduct it from. I make $40,000 a year." Margaret laughed. "Tom, you need an accountant. You can carry forward the deductions. Use them against future income. If you ever sell anything else, write a book, do consulting, those deductions will save you millions." "I'm not planning on having millions to deduct from." "Maybe not, but Earl's gift keeps giving. The deduction is real value even if it's not cash in hand." Tom thought about that. Earl's gift. Not just the combine, the whole lesson, the whole journey. Understanding that value came in many forms. "Margaret, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think I made the right choice?" Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "Tom, I've spent 35 years studying machines, evaluating them, pricing them, helping people buy and sell them. And I've learned something. The machines that matter most are the ones still doing their job. The ones still teaching, still working, still connecting people to the past. You gave that combine a future. That's the right choice." After Margaret hung up, Tom made another call. "Frank Morrison." "Frank, the combine is going to Morrison Foundation. They're going to tour it." Frank's voice swelled with pride. "That's good, Tom. That's real good. She deserves to be seen. She deserves to be touched." Earl tested her with his hands. Kids should learn with theirs. Amen to that. Tom spent the rest of the morning calling people. Bill, to thank him for the loan and tell him the choice. Bill was quiet, then said simply, "Earl would be proud." Emily, to tell her before she heard it elsewhere. Emily was silent for a long time. "Then, Dad, you just gave away $20 million to strangers. To kids who need to dream. There's a difference." Emily laughed, a sound caught between tears and joy. "You're crazy, but I love you for it." "I love you too, sweetheart." Tom tried calling Sarah, his younger daughter. Got voicemail, left a message. Hoped she'd call back. They'd been estranged even longer than Emily. But maybe this would reach her. Maybe this would show her that her father was trying to be the man he should have been all along. At noon, Bobby called. Tom almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "You're an idiot." "Hello to you too, Bobby." $20 million. The Smithsonian wanted to pay you $20 million, and you gave it away. "I donated it." "Same thing." Bobby's voice was tight with rage. "Do you know what I could have done with that money if you'd split it? What Kathy could have done? What Bill could have done? Built bigger businesses? Bought bigger houses? Secured our futures, you selfish bastard." Tom felt his jaw clench. I'm selfish because I donated a $20 million asset to education. You're selfish because you did it without consulting family, because you made a decision that affects all of us without giving us a say. It wasn't your decision to make. It was mine. Earl left it to me. Because he was senile. The judge disagreed. Bobby was breathing hard. Tom could hear it through the phone. This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll fight this until there's nothing left. You do that, Bobby. Spend your money on lawyers instead of living your life. But the combine is donated, legal and done. Bobby hung up. Tom set down his phone. His hand was shaking. Not from fear, from the adrenaline of standing up for himself, of choosing right over easy. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Tom opened it to find Kathy standing there. She looked tired, older than her 53 years. Her designer coat couldn't hide the exhaustion in her face. Can I come in? Tom stepped aside. Kathy walked into a small rental house, looked around at the simple furniture, the sparse decoration, the life of a man who'd never valued possessions over peace. She sat at his kitchen table without being asked. Tom made coffee. They sat across from each other like strangers, which Tom supposed they were. Bobby's losing his mind. I know. Kathy wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. Tom, I need you to understand something. I went along with Bobby's lawsuit because I was scared. Of what? Of being the only one who didn't fight. Of looking weak. Of Bobby thinking I was on your side instead of his. Tom sipped his coffee. Family shouldn't have sides. I know that now. Kathy looked up. Her eyes were wet. Tom, I'm sorry. For the lawsuit, for not standing up for you, for choosing money over what's right. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while. Then Kathy spoke again. What you did, donating the combine, that took guts. Or stupidity, depending on who you ask. Kathy smiled. Earl always said you had more backbone than the rest of us combined. Guess he was right. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. That's what good men do. They see the best in people and trust them to become it. Tom felt his throat tighten. Earl had trusted him with this choice, had believed Tom would choose meaning over money, and Tom had proven him right. Kathy stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. And I think Emily getting you back is worth more than any amount of money. How did you know about Emily? Small family. Good news travels fast, too. She paused. Tom, I haven't been a good cousin. Let me try to be better. I'd like that. After Kathy left, Tom sat alone in his house. The phone stayed quiet. The world kept turning, and Tom felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. 3 days later, the contract was signed. Tom met Helen Morrison at a lawyer's office in Des Moines. Stacks of papers, legal language about charitable donations and tax implications and liability waivers. Tom signed everything. Helen signed everything. The lawyer notarized it all. When it was done, Helen shook Tom's hand. The Combine is scheduled to start its tour in March. First stop, the Iowa State Fair. Then we'll spend 3 years hitting every state. We're calling it the American Harvest Tour. Earl would love that. Helen pulled out a folder. We're also doing something else. With your permission. What's that? Helen opened the folder. Inside were mock-ups, brochures, educational materials, all featuring the Combine and all featuring Earl's story. We want to tell his story. The Korean War veteran who became a farmer, who became an engineer, who changed agriculture forever. The man who preserved history for 50 years. We want every kid who sees this Combine to know about Earl Brennan. Tom couldn't speak, just nodded. There's more. Helen pulled out another mock-up. We're creating a scholarship. The Earl Brennan Memorial Scholarship for students from farming families who want to study agricultural engineering. We're funding it with $1 million from our endowment. Tom found his voice. Why? Because Earl's legacy shouldn't just be a machine. It should be the people he inspired. The kids who see that Combine and decide to innovate, to create, to make farming better. Tom held the mock-up. Read the words. Earl's name, his photo from 1975 standing beside the brand new prototype. The description of his life, his service, his vision. This is perfect. This is exactly what he would have wanted. Helen smiled. We think so too. On the drive home, Tom felt Earl's presence. Not haunting, guiding. Like the old man was sitting in the passenger seat, nodding approval. Saying without words, you did good, Tommy. You understood. That night, Sarah called. Tom's younger daughter. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Dad, I heard what you did. Tom waited, ready for criticism, for judgment, for disappointment. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Tom felt tears come. Really? Really? Sarah's voice was thick. Dad, I've been so angry at you for the divorce, for choosing your work over family, for not being there. But this, giving away millions to help kids learn. That's the man I remember from when I was little. The man who built me a dollhouse with his hands. The man who taught me that work mattered. I'm sorry I lost my way. We all lose our way sometimes. Sarah paused. Dad, I'm getting married next spring. Tom's heart clenched. Congratulations. I'd like you there, if you want to come. I'd love to. And Dad, Sarah said, maybe we could talk more. Maybe we could try again. I'd like that very much. After they hung up, Tom sat in the dark. Both his daughters back in his life. Both reaching out. Both forgiving. The combine had bought him something money never could. Redemption. December came with snow. Tom threw himself into work. His carpentry business picked up. Word had spread about his choice. People respected him. Suddenly, everyone wanted furniture made by the man who gave away millions. He hired an apprentice, a kid from town, 19, didn't want college, wanted to work with his hands. Tom taught him the way Earl had taught Tom. Patience, precision, pride in craft. 2 weeks before Christmas, Bill called. Tom, I need to tell you something about Bobby. What about him? He's struggling, really struggling. This thing with the combine, with you, it's eating him alive. He made his choice, Bill. I know. But he's family, and he's drowning. Bill paused. He called me last night, 3 in the morning. Drunk, crying, said he can't sleep, can't focus. His wife is threatening to leave. Tom felt his anger soften slightly. What does he want? He wants to apologize, but he's too proud, too ashamed. Bill's voice was urgent. Tom, I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to consider talking to him, for family. Tom looked out at the December night, snow falling, quiet. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. 3 days before Christmas, Tom drove to Bobby's house. The mansion glowed with lights, decorations everywhere. The perfect exterior hiding whatever pain lived inside. Tom sat in his truck for a moment, engine running, heat blasting. He could turn around, drive away. Let Bobby suffer the consequences of his choices. But Earl's voice echoed in his head. Family heals or it dies, Tommy. You choose which. Tom turned off the engine, walked to the door, rang the bell. Bobby answered. He looked rough, unshaven, eyes hollow. Thinner than Tom had ever seen him. The expensive suit hung loose on his frame. His tie was crooked. This wasn't the Bobby who ran 3 dealerships with military precision. This was a man coming apart. Tom, Bobby's voice cracked. Can we talk? Bobby stepped aside, his hand shook as he gestured Tom inside. They walked through the mansion, past the marble foyer, past the grand staircase, past rooms filled with expensive furniture and art. Everything perfect, everything hollow. They went to his study, leather furniture, awards on the walls, photos of Bobby with mayors and governors. Success displayed like trophies. But there were new additions, empty whiskey bottles on the desk, papers scattered, a blanket on the couch like Bobby had been sleeping there. Bobby poured 2 whiskeys. His hand shook. Liquid sloshed over the rim. He didn't notice, handed one to Tom. They sat across from each other. Bill said you're struggling. Bobby laughed, bitter and broken. That's a nice way of putting it. He drank, winced, drank again. Tom, I've been a bastard, worse than a bastard. I've been everything Earl taught us not to be. We all make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice, a series of choices. Bobby set down his glass, picked up a photo from his desk. Him and Earl, 20 years ago, standing beside a tractor, both smiling. You know what Earl said to me that day? Bobby's voice was thick. He said, Bobby, you're good at making money, but don't let money make you. I laughed. Thought he was being a sentimental old man. But he was right, Tom. The money made me, turned me into something ugly. Tom sipped his whiskey, waited. I called those collectors before Earl died. You know that. What you don't know is why. Bobby looked down at his hands. Because I was jealous of you and Earl, of how he looked at you, how he talked about you, like you were special. You're successful, Bobby. You have everything. I have money. Bobby's voice broke. But Earl had respect. For you, not for me. Never for me. And I hated that. Hated you for it. Do you know what it's like, being the successful one, the rich one, and still feeling like the failure? Tom thought about his own life. The divorce, the estranged daughters, The rental house and struggling business. Yeah, I know exactly what that's like. Bobby looked up. Surprise. You. Success isn't measured in dollars, Bobby. Earl taught me that. Took me 52 years to learn it. You learned it. Bobby's laugh was hollow. I'm 55 and I'm just figuring out I don't know anything. Tom, when you donated that combine, when you gave away $20 million like it was nothing, I lost my mind. Not because of the money, because everyone looked at you like you were a hero, and they looked at me like I was garbage. They looked at you like you made a mistake. There's a difference. Is there? Bobby stood, walked to the window. Nancy left me. Did Bill tell you that? He mentioned it. She said I was obsessed, said I cared more about that combine than about her, about us. Bobby's shoulders shook. She was right. I spent months trying to get you to sell it, made it my mission, and I lost my wife doing it. I'm sorry. Don't be. I deserved it. Bobby turned back. His face was wet. Tom, I've lost everything that matters. My wife, my self-respect, the respect of my family. And you know what the worst part is? What? I still have all the money. 3 dealerships, 2 million in the bank, a mansion. And I'd trade it all to have what you have. What do I have? Peace, Bobby's voice broke completely. You have peace. You sleep at night, you look in the mirror, and don't hate what you see. You have your daughters back. You have Earl's approval, even though he's gone. You have everything that matters. Tom stood, walked over to Bobby. They stood there, 2 cousins, 2 men broken by different things. I don't have peace every day. Tom's voice was quiet. Some days I wonder if I was stupid, if I should have taken the money, if I should have secured my future instead of chasing meaning. But you don't wonder if you made the right choice. No. Tom met Bobby's eyes. I don't wonder that. They sat in silence. Outside, snow fell harder. Christmas lights from neighbor houses twinkled through the window. Life continuing around them. I don't know how to fix this, Bobby said. Don't know how to be better. Don't even know where to start. Start with Christmas dinner. Bobby looked up. What? Come to Christmas dinner. At my place. It won't be fancy, but it'll be family. Tom, I don't deserve. None of us deserve grace. We just give it anyway. That's what family means. Bobby's face crumpled. He started to cry. Really cry. 55 years of pride and pain pouring out. The walls came down. The successful businessman disappeared. What remained was just a man, broken, needing forgiveness. Tom stood, walked over, put his hand on Bobby's shoulder. Just let him cry. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't try to comfort. Just stood there, present, solid, the way Earl used to stand with Tom when Tom's life fell apart. After a while, Bobby looked up. I don't deserve this. None of us do. But Earl gave it to us anyway. Now I'm passing it forward. Bobby wiped his eyes, tried to laugh. Look at me, 55 years old, crying like a kid. Earl cried, did you know that? Tom sat back down. After the funeral for my dad, your Uncle James, Earl went out to the barn and cried for hours. I heard him. I was 8 years old and I heard my grandfather weep. I never knew that. Strong men cry, Bobby. Weak men pretend they don't need to. They sat for another hour, talking, really talking, about Earl, about childhood, about choices made and roads not taken, about regret and redemption and whether it was ever too late to change. When Tom left, Bobby walked him to the door. Thank you for not giving up on me. We're family. That's what family does. Bobby smiled. Sad but real. Earl would be proud of you. He'd be proud of all of us if we stick together. They didn't hug, not yet, but they shook hands, held on longer than necessary, a start. Christmas dinner was at Tom's rental house. Small, crowded. Bill and his family, Kathy and hers. Bobby came alone. His wife had left 2 days before, but he came. They ate, told stories about Earl, laughed, remembered. Bobby was quiet mostly, but he was there. That was enough. After dinner, Bobby pulled Tom aside. Thank you for not giving up on me. We're family. That's what family does. Bobby smiled. Sad but real. Earl would be proud of you. He'd be proud of all of us if we stick together. They didn't hug, not yet, but they shook hands. And that was a start. Emily came to Christmas bringing her fiancé. Sarah couldn't make it from Minneapolis, but sent a video message. Around the table, the Brennan family gathered. Broken but mending, scarred but healing. March arrived with the first hint of spring. The snow melted. Green pushed up through brown. Iowa waking from winter sleep. And the American Harvest Tour began. Tom drove to the state fairgrounds for the opening ceremony. The combine sat on a stage, gleaming under spotlights, surrounded by people, hundreds of them, farmers, families, children, all come to see the machine that changed their lives. Helen Morrison gave a speech, talked about innovation and legacy and education, talked about Earl and his vision. Then she invited Tom to the stage. Tom climbed up, feeling every eye on him. Helen handed him a microphone. "I'm not much for speeches," Tom's voice cracked, "but I want to tell you about my grandfather." He talked for 10 minutes about Earl the soldier, Earl the farmer, Earl the engineer, Earl the teacher, about a man who understood that true wealth wasn't money but meaning. That legacy wasn't what you left behind, but what you gave forward. When he finished, the crowd applauded. Then Helen invited everyone to come touch the combine, to sit in the cab, to see history. Tom watched children climb onto the machine, watched their faces light up, watched parents explain how this invention had made food cheaper, farming better, life easier. Watched teenagers take photos, watched elderly farmers weep. Frank Morrison stood beside Tom. "She's alive again." "Yeah, she is." A boy, maybe 10, climbed into the cab, put his hands on the wheel. His father stood beside him, explaining the controls. The boy's eyes were wide with wonder. Tom remembered being that age, sitting in Earl's lap in this same cab, 50 years ago, the cycle continuing, the legacy passing forward. Margaret Chen appeared with a notebook. "Tom, I'm writing the article for Agricultural History Quarterly. Can I interview you?" They sat on a bench. Margaret asked questions. Tom answered, talked about the journey from inheritance to donation, from confusion to clarity, from money to meaning. "Why did you choose to donate instead of sell?" Tom thought about that. "Because Earl taught me that some questions don't have answers. They have choices. And the right choice isn't always the profitable one." "What did Earl teach you?" "That legacy isn't about leaving wealth. It's about leaving wisdom. That a man's worth isn't his bank account, but his impact. That the best inheritance is permission to choose meaning over money." Margaret wrote furiously, then looked up. "Tom, what you did has changed the conversation in the collector world. People are asking different questions now. Not just what something's worth, but what it means." "Is that good?" "It's necessary. We've spent too long worshiping price tags and forgetting purpose." 6 months after the tour started, Helen called with an update. "Tom, we've had 300,000 people see the combine, and we've received 50 applications for the Earl Brennan Scholarship. 50 kids who want to study agricultural engineering because they sat in that cab and dreamed." Tom felt his chest swell. "That's incredible. It's just the beginning. We're projecting 2 million visitors over the 3-year tour, and we're expanding the scholarship, using the publicity to raise funds. We might be able to support 100 students a year." Tom hung up and sat in his workshop, looked at Earl's tools, the hand plane, the level, the knife. Simple things that lasted, simple things that mattered. His phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Dad, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather." Tom read it 3 times. Grandfather. He was going to be what Earl had been to him. The chance to pass on wisdom, to teach, to matter to someone who would carry his memory forward. He called Emily immediately. "Congratulations, sweetheart." Emily was crying and laughing at once. "Dad, I'm terrified." "That means you'll be a good mother." "Did you feel this way when Mom was pregnant with me?" "Terrified and thrilled and certain I'd screw it up." Tom smiled. "But you turned out pretty good. Because of you and Grandpa Earl." Emily paused. "Dad, I want to name the baby Earl if it's a boy. Is that okay?" Tom's vision blurred. "That's more than okay." After the call, Tom walked outside. Spring evening, warm, the smell of fresh earth. He thought about Earl teaching him to plant a garden at 8 years old. Thought about teaching his own daughters to recognize oak from maple. Thought about teaching his grandchild, Earl's great-great-grandchild, the same lessons. The cycle continuing, the legacy unbroken. 1 year after the donation, Tom received a letter. Thick envelope, official looking. He opened it at his kitchen table. Inside was a certificate and a letter from the Smithsonian. "Dear Mr. Brennan, while we were disappointed not to acquire the IH 1480 prototype for our permanent collection, we recognize and applaud your choice. The Morrison Foundation's tour has reached more Americans than our museum could in a decade. You chose accessibility over prestige. That's commendable. To honor your decision and your grandfather's legacy, We would like to award you the Smithsonian Medal for Preservation of American Heritage. Please join us in Washington this June for the ceremony." Tom stared at the letter, the Smithsonian Medal, recognition, validation, not for having wealth, but for choosing wisely. He called Bill. "You're not going to believe this. Try me." Tom read the letter. Bill whistled. "That's a big deal, Tommy. National recognition. For giving away money. For understanding what matters." Bill paused. "You going?" Tom thought about it. Washington in June, ceremony at the Smithsonian, standing where the Combine could have been, accepting an award for choosing to send it elsewhere. "Yeah, I'm going, and I'm taking Emily and Sarah." "That's good. That's real good." The ceremony was June 15th. Tom flew to Washington with both his daughters. First time he'd been on a plane in 20 years. First time he'd seen both daughters together in 5 years. They stayed in a hotel near the National Mall, ate dinner together, talked and laughed and healed old wounds. Emily's belly was just starting to show. Sarah was planning her wedding. Tom was invited, expected, welcomed. The ceremony was in the Smithsonian's main hall. Hundreds of people, officials, historians, collectors. Tom wore a new suit. Emily and Sarah sat in the front row, beaming. Dr. James Walsh, the curator who'd offered $20 million, presented the medal. Thomas Brennan could have sold the IH-1480 prototype for generational wealth. Instead, he chose to donate it to education, to share it with America's children, to honor his grandfather's legacy not with profit but with purpose. That choice embodies the best of American values. Tom accepted the medal, heavy bronze on a ribbon, his name engraved on the back. He stood at the podium looking out at the crowd. "I didn't do this for recognition. I did it because my grandfather taught me that the value of something isn't its price. It's its purpose. That Combine's purpose was to teach. Selling it would have betrayed everything Earl Brennan stood for." The crowd applauded. After the ceremony, people came up to shake his hand. Collectors who respected his choice even as they questioned it. Educators who thanked him. Children from schools that had visited the Combine on tour. One old farmer, maybe 80, pulled Tom aside. "I used it in 1480 and 76. Changed my life. Made farming profitable again. Seeing that prototype restored, seeing kids learn from it, that's the right thing. Your grandfather would be proud." That night, Tom walked at the National Mall with his daughters. Past the monuments, past the memorials, past the weight of history. Emily took his arm. "Dad, are you happy?" Tom thought about that, about the rental house, about the carpentry business that paid the bills but not much more, about the $20 million he'd given away, about the medal in his pocket, about his daughters on either side. "Yeah, I'm happy." Sarah squeezed his other arm. "We're proud of you." Tom looked up at the Washington Monument piercing the sky, looked at the Lincoln Memorial glowing white in the distance, looked at his daughters. "Earl gave me a gift. Not money, not stuff. He gave me the permission to choose who I wanted to be." 2 years after the donation, the tour completed its journey through all 50 states. The Combine had been seen by 2.3 million people, inspired 147 students to apply for the Earl Brennan Scholarship. 30 had been selected and were studying agricultural engineering at universities across the country. Helen Morrison threw a celebration. Tom was the guest of honor. The Combine sat center stage, still gleaming, still perfect, still purposeful. Frank Morrison was there with his whole crew. Roy, Dennis, Pete, the Vietnam vets who'd restored the machine. They stood together, proud of their work. Margaret Chen gave a presentation. Her article had been published, had won an award. She showed slides of the tour, photos of children on the Combine, quotes from teachers, statistics on increased interest in agricultural education. At the end, she showed Earl's photo, young Earl beside the new prototype in 1975, old Earl on his porch in 2023, and Tom in between, the bridge between generations. Bill was there with his family, Kathy with hers. Bobby came too, bringing his son David. Bobby's son had just graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, was going to work for John Deere designing next-generation harvesting equipment. Bobby pulled Tom aside. "David says he was inspired by Grandpa Earl's story, says he wants to innovate like Earl did." Tom looked at Bobby's son, saw Earl's legacy continuing in a whole new generation. "That's wonderful." Bobby's voice was thick. "Tom, I was wrong about everything, but I was most wrong about you. You're not a failure. You're the most successful person I know." "Bobby, you have 3 dealerships. And you have a legacy that will outlast all of us. Bobby paused. I'm proud to call you my cousin. Proud to call you family. Tom felt tears prick his eyes. We've always been family. Just took us a while to remember it. They hugged then, really hugged. Brothers in all but name. The rift finally healed. The celebration lasted late into the night. Tom found himself alone with the combine at one point. Put his hand on the metal, still warm from stage lights. We did good, didn't we, Grandpa? He felt Earl's answer in the silence, felt approval, felt love. That night, Tom drove home to Iowa, to his rental house, to his workshop, to his simple life. But nothing felt simple anymore. Everything felt purposeful, meaningful, right. 3 years after the donation in late September, Emily called at 3 in the morning. Dad, it's time. Tom was in his truck within minutes. Drove through empty streets to the hospital. Dawn breaking over Iowa. The sky turning from black to gray to gold. New life coming into the world. He sat in the waiting room for 6 hours. Bill showed up, then Kathy. Even Bobby came, looking nervous and hopeful. The family gathered, waiting together. When the nurse finally came out, she was smiling. It's a boy. Everyone's healthy. Emily's asking for you. Tom walked down the hospital corridor on shaking legs, pushed open the door to Emily's room. She was there, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. Dad, her voice was thick with emotion. Come meet your grandson. Tom walked over, looked down at the baby. So small, perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, eyes closed, dreaming baby dreams. His name is Earl, Emily's voice broke. Earl James Brennan, after great-grandpa and grandpa. Tom felt tears stream down his face. Couldn't stop them. Didn't try. Can I hold him? Emily placed the baby in Tom's arms. The weight was nothing. The responsibility was everything. Tom looked down at this new life, this continuation of Earl's legacy, 4 generations connecting in this moment. Hello, Earl. Tom's voice was a whisper. Your great-great-grandfather would be so proud. So proud. The baby stirred, opened his eyes, deep blue, looking up at Tom like he knew, like he understood. I'm your grandpa, and I'm going to teach you everything Earl taught me about work, about meaning, about choosing what matters. Emily watched from the bed. Dad, thank you. For what? For showing me what really matters, for being the man you became, for giving me back my father. Tom held his grandson, felt the cycle complete. Earl had raised him. He'd raised Emily. Now Emily had given him this. Another Earl, another chance, another generation to pass on wisdom. Bobby appeared in the doorway, knocked softly. Can I come in? Emily nodded. Bobby walked over, looked down at the baby. He's beautiful, Emily. His name is Earl. Bobby's face worked. He looked at Tom. That's good. That's really good. He paused. Tom, can I? Tom placed the baby in Bobby's arms. Bobby held him like glass, like something precious beyond measure. Hey there, little guy. I'm your great-uncle Bobby, and I'm going to try to be better than I was. Gonna try to be the kind of man you can be proud of. The baby yawned. Bobby laughed, tears on his face. Kids always yawn when I talk. Guess I'm boring even to newborns. They all laughed, the tension breaking, family together, healing continuing. Sarah got married the following summer. June, perfect weather. Outdoor ceremony at a vineyard in the rolling hills outside Cedar Falls. Tom wore a new suit, walked Sarah down the aisle, her arm through his, both of them crying. At the altar, Sarah turned to him. Thank you, Dad, for everything. Tom kissed her forehead. Be happy, sweetheart. He walked back to his seat, sat next to Emily, who held baby Earl. The ceremony proceeded. Sarah and her husband exchanged vows, promised forever, believed it with all their hearts. At the reception, Tom danced with both his daughters, held his grandson, talked with Bill and Kathy and Bobby. Family whole again. Not perfect, never perfect, but together. Late in the evening, Bobby pulled Tom aside. David's been accepted to MIT, mechanical engineering PhD program. Full ride. Tom felt his chest swell. Bobby, that's incredible. Bobby's voice was thick. He wants to design agricultural equipment. Says he wants to be like Earl, create things that help farmers. Earl's legacy spreading, touching even Bobby's son. You must be proud. Bobby nodded. I am. But more than that, I'm grateful. Grateful David got to know Earl's story. Grateful he's choosing meaning over money. Even if his old man was too stupid to do the same. You're choosing it now. That's what matters. Bobby smiled, sad and hopeful at once. Better late than never, right? Right. They stood together, watching Sarah and her husband dance, watching Emily with baby Earl, watching family celebrate. The Brennan family, broken and healed, scarred and stronger. 5 years after the donation, on a warm May afternoon, Tom got a letter. A young woman studying agricultural engineering on the Earl Brennan Scholarship. Mr. Brennan, I wanted to thank you. I grew up on a farm but couldn't afford college. Your grandfather's scholarship made it possible. I'm now designing irrigation systems that use 40% less water. Because of Earl Brennan, I get to help farmers. I get to innovate. I get to matter. Tom read that letter 10 times, put it in a frame, hung it in his workshop. 10 years after the donation, the combine was retired from touring. Too much wear, too much use, too many children climbing, too many hands touching. The machine had given everything. Helen called Tom. We want to give her a permanent home. The Smithsonian has offered to house her. Full exhibit. Earl's story told properly. Tom thought about that, about the combine's journey, from field to restoration to tour to museum, full circle. Earl would approve. On the day the combine entered the Smithsonian, Tom was there. He stood in front of the exhibit, read the placard. International Harvester Model 1480 Prototype, serial number 001, 1975. The machine that revolutionized harvesting. Tested by Earl Brennan, Korean War veteran and farmer. Preserved for 50 years. Restored by his grandson, Thomas Brennan. Donated to education. Seen by 5 million Americans during 10-year tour. Inspired 217 students to study agricultural engineering through the Earl Brennan Memorial Scholarship. Tom touched the glass. Beyond it, the combine gleamed. Perfect, eternal, teaching still. His grandson, little Earl, now 10 years old, stood beside him. Great-great-grandpa drove this? He tested it, made it better, changed farming forever. Young Earl looked up at Tom. Are you proud of him? Tom felt his eyes burn every single day. And is he proud of you? Tom thought about the journey, the inheritance, the choice, the legacy. He thought about Earl's words. The money ain't the inheritance. The choice is the inheritance. Yeah, Tom smiled. I think he is. They stood together, 3 generations separated but connected, the combine between them. History and future meeting in the present, the cycle unbroken, the legacy alive. Tom Brennan had inherited $18 million, given it away, ended up with nothing but a medal and memories, and somehow impossibly ended up richer than he'd ever dreamed. Because Earl had been right all along. The money wasn't the inheritance. The choice was the inheritance. And Tom had chosen wisely. He'd chosen meaning over money, legacy over wealth, purpose over profit. And in doing so, he'd become the man Earl had always known he could be. As they left the museum, young Earl took Tom's hand. Grandpa, when I grow up, I want to be like great-great-grandpa Earl. I want to invent things that help people. Tom squeezed his grandson's hand. Then you will. Because that's what Brennan men do. We choose what matters. Walking out into the Washington afternoon, Tom felt Earl's presence one last time. Felt approval, felt love, felt peace. The inheritance was complete. The legacy secure. The harvest gathered. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Tom imagined Earl Brennan smiling, knowing that his last harvest had yielded the richest crop of all. Not money, not fame, but meaning, purpose, family, love. The things that truly mattered, the things that lasted, the things worth more than all the millions in the world.